We're done.
Okay, I hit start.
Rock and roll.
And it looks like we're live.
We're doing it. We're doing it.
Okay, it is 1:18 p.m. And this is, I guess we'll call this, maybe I'll edit the title and call it the Christmas stream as well, because this will be like the
Christmas dream?
Christmas stream, cozy Christmas stream.
Stream. Stream. I was like, ooh.
I've got my...
What you mix in there, sir? I've been mixing it for like 5
well,
minutes.
it's because it's like collagen, matcha latte powder, which is, you know, like crystallized sugar with the green tea powder, which is why it's a little
like
green.
it.
I don't know.
In cold milk?
Cold
or you
milk.
heat it up?
Goat
Oh,
milk.
it's hard to dissolve the fucking collagen.
Oat milk.
Goat
Oat milk with a G before the O. The only
Always.
kind I drink.
It's hard to dissolve that shit.
I also
in
have
there.
some
I
Christmas
don't know.
cookies that a coworker gave me.
Oh, those are the
Yeah, they're-
best little round box
butter-
things. Oh,
Butter
or
cookies,
is it a
butter
box? What
sugar.
do you call
Yeah, a tin.
tin
Yeah.
can? Is that what it is? Tin can. Yes, those are good.
So it's real cozy at this time.
Man, I don't have any snacky snacks. I only have a cappuccino.
oh,
This is
that's
it.
not bad.
Just
That's
a
not
little cappuccino. Yeah.
Okay, so today's topic, as I informed you, is going to be the Bioelectric, which you have and have read, correct?
Yes. Long time ago,
Yeah.
though. I'll be honest. You know, cover to cover.
Yeah, I read it it would have been maybe late 2016, possibly 2017. It was when I was towards the end of my PhD.
Oh no, it was much earlier. For me, it was my spiritual aura chakra days when I
Really?
got into kind of yeah. Oh yeah.
Interesting.
Well, because you can kind of what I'm saying. The whole aura, your electric field.
Well, he
all that
uses
kind of
the
stuff.
word,
You can,
which I don't like. He uses the term Western medicine, which
Yeah.
is the thing that people that generally, now that's a fine term to use and it's rather descriptive, but generally speaking, if somebody uses that term, the next thing they say is probably going to be stupid.
Well, listen, my Chinese medicine doctor.
And actually, I don't have a problem with Chinese medicine. It's just
I don't either,
Yeah.
right? But it's funny to
there's
categorize.
well,
it that
it's
way,
like
right?
people
to,
that I'm not saying there might not be some type of biological application for crystals, but it's probably not what like your local astrology GF thinks it is. Somebody says Jake Paul beats Israel Adesanya in a 7-round thumb war match.
Get the fuck out
Thumb
of
war
here.
match.
I don't know. Did you see the way Taran fell? I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't think it was fake, but it fucking kind of looked fake the way that he fell. He kind of just like, usually guys stiff up really hard, and he kind of just like hit.
Well, he
and then
did
looks down
he
and
did
just
the
fell.
wildebeest, like the like
wildebeest.
kind of like if you imagine like a game animal running, like a big wildebeest getting shot and dying and kind of face planting.
Yeah, like he didn't
Like
stiff up. You know
Andrei
what I'm saying?
Arlovsky actually kind of did the wildebeest when he got hit by Fedor. Do you remember that?
Dude, but it was in the air.
Yeah, it was in
we
the
talked
air,
about
yeah.
it with you. It was in the fucking air, bro. But that was for real, because you. And then there was the video of his face. He's just laying down with his face on the canvas, and his eyes are just like in nowhere land.
Well,
He's just like hanging.
I don't
know.
I don't like to think that I get, because it's like if anybody's going to do that kind of stuff, it's going to be a YouTuber and someone like Tyrone Woodley, who has basically been saying for 5 years that he's not paid enough, he's not respected, it's race, the UFC's racist, and he's like the champion and he's promoted. He just had a crappy personality. He had, unless somebody really made him fight, he had boring fights.
Yeah, and he had a terrible rap career, which was
Yeah,
hilarious.
and
You heard that
very
song,
little
like,
self-awareness.
falling
Yeah.
out of love, falling in and out of love with you, or whatever.
Yeah, he
the
just
fuck
has
it
no
was.
self-awareness. So if anybody's going to like take a dive for however many millions of dollars, it's going to be him. But I don't know. Are there levels? I remember Rampage, Quentin Jackson said when he was in Pride, his first fight was against Sakuraba. And they said, if you, here's your fight, there's the fight money, the win money. And if you win by knockout, you get this much of a bonus. And if you lose by submission, you get.
That was specified.
So in other words,
I remember
the highest amount he could make was lose to Sakuraba by submission, and
By
the second
submission.
highest amount was win by knockout. and the third
Yeah.
highest amount
I
is
wish,
just win.
you know what would be a dream of mine if somebody made a documentary, a real deep dive documentary about the Pride Days, who ran it, how they fucked the, how
You
this
get your finger cut
Yakuza were
off for
involved in
that.
it. Oh, well, yeah, probably. But wouldn't that be fucking awesome to like know some of this backstory there? Because there was some shady stuff going on, but it was so awesome. It was so awesome. Good days, man. Good old days.
Yeah, I think the Bob Sapp fight with Crow Cop was kind of fishy.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of them, man.
But then again,
Yeah.
a lot of those
Mm.
guys, like, you don't have to fix both fighters. You can just fix one. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Or like you said, that's a great way of fixing things, right? Just incentivizing. Oh, if you just do
yeah,
this, you'll get a lot more money. And it's like, come on, most of those guys back then, especially, come on, almost all of them were fighting for money, right? They weren't fighting for like, I want to be the greatest MMA. Oh shit! I thought somebody like walked in. I was like, Kyle. I didn't realize. Look at the door. Anyway, I was just saying that they weren't fighting to be the greatest mixed martial artists of all time, right? They were just a lot of them were just fighting for money, and then some of them were really real martial artists, like Crow Cop, like
hmm
Fedor.
yeah. I think so. I think
So,
like Woodley might have gotten a deal somehow where it's like, if you win, you get this much money. If you lose, you get this much money. But if you lose by knockout, you get
I don't know,
because
man.
it
And
was
then
the
he got
sixth
up
because it
right
was the
away.
sixth round. So
Mm-hmm.
he's losing the decision, right? So he's gonna
Mm-hmm.
lose money, and then it's like, wait a second, if I hit the canvas between 6, 7, and 8, in the next 3 rounds, I get twice as much money, like in some kind of back channel.
Yeah.
So that's the one way I could. But because Woodley's fights always look like crap. Like, he doesn't throw any strikes. He's super hesitant. He doesn't do anything.
Yep. You remember that Stephen Boy Thompson fight with him? Well, two of them.
Yeah.
Remember how fucking
Well,
boring they
yeah, but
were?
those
They were
were real
terrible.
fights, though.
Well, I know. But I'm saying they were the worst fights ever, and it was mostly because of him, because he was just so hesitant not to do anything. Right? I
Well,
just remember that.
and
I'm not a big fan of Stephen Boy. Tell you the truth, I just don't think his style works. I mean, I like
well, it
him
worked really
because he
well
seems like,
until it stopped. Like, his fight against
yeah.
Johnny
I mean, like,
Hendricks was awesome.
oh yeah, dude, that's so
Somebody
old
asked about
school, though,
yoga
bro.
and improves metabolism. I find even twice a week stretching starts to stress me out. Stretching stresses me out.
Stretching stresses you out. Maybe you're stretching too much then. Remember, it's not like it's not a muscular literal stretching thing. You're not actually lengthening anything really. You're just teaching your nervous system to relax. So you shouldn't do it where you're killing yourself. You should be nice and relaxed about it. That's why, like a good yoga class, well, most of them anyways, especially now, will tell you to relax and breathe through your nose. But why they're doing it is because they're trying to tell you to like chill out, relax, let your nervous system calm down. And that way, that's how you get deeper into stretches. So you don't want to like resist against it. The dumbest thing you can do is like some of those like really intense like bouncing. I mean, if you're ready for it, you know what you're doing, you can definitely do whatever kind of stretching you want. But anyway, my point is just chill out on the stretching. Just make sure
Hey,
you're
that's a pretty
relaxed
good
when you're doing it.
transition. You said it's about the
Mm.
nervous system. But actually, before we get into
Mm-hmm.
that, I want to, last last time, somebody was bringing up the diindole methane stuff, which I bought.
Oh
So
shit.
I bought this
Mm-hmm.
from uh
And research.
what's it, because that bodybuilder Wesley
What?
Vissers, it's the website that he promotes.
I don't
Jacked
know.
Factory.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. Is that the same as Jack 3D?
I don't
Is
think
that the
so.
same brand that did
It's
that? Remember Jack
yeah.
3D?
Well, I've never used any of those products, but I remember seeing the insignia.
I remember taking it one time and thinking I was gonna fucking die because my heart was racing so fast.
So anyway, I tried this and it made me feel really sick. I don't
Really?
know. There's some herbs in here, so it's got. Well, first of all,
Ashwagandha. Let me
it's
guess. It's
rat
it.
poison, if you will.
It's got the D3.
Yeah, it's
Got the
it's got
D3.
cholecalciferol. It's got zinc, as zinc
Oh, just
orotate,
yeah,
grapeseed extract,
yeah.
diindole methane, rhodiola root extract,
Use. Let's try
Eurycoma
that.
longifolia root extract, and
Uricoma? I don't know.
Uricoma, yeah,
Okay.
and black pepper
Okay.
fruit extract.
Could be the black pepper fruit that made you feel sick, dude. Pepper, anything pepper extract? I've
Well,
had that before.
it made me feel sick like when I took, actually I have it right here, Thorn brand NAC. It's not coming out very well.
Hmm. Oh, I have that here too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I had taken a bottle of some other brand that was in tablets, and they were 500 milligram tablets, and I would take like two, sometimes three of those a day, and I didn't really feel anything bad
Hmm.
or good. It was just something I was taking as like, oh, it's an antioxidant, it's this, it's that. And so I got
Hmm.
the, because it's like, oh, you know, Thorn's a little bit better than the average brand. So I bought some of that, and it's in capsules, and they're 500 milligrams. And I was trying to take, I was like, you know, I'm going to do an experiment. I'm going to take one, like at least three of these a day, maybe four. So like 1.5 to 2 grams a day.
Mm.
And I didn't realize until about a week in, but I had flu-like symptoms the entire time. I thought I had COVID because at the same exact time, one of my friends like tested positive for COVID and had it, and I was just like, here we go. And
And this is before you got COVID, right?
no,
Because you
after
had it
I
too.
had it last year. This is this year.
Oh, you thought you might have gotten it again? Oh
Hey,
shit.
well, it could have been like, you know, the Ligma variant or whatever. So,
Oh!
so man, this thing is so close to me. I need to push it back. So anyway, I felt sick, and I stopped taking it, and then I started to feel better, and then I took one, and the symptoms came back a little bit. So I kind of pretty much figured out that's what was going on. So I think that I'm sensitive to sulfur compounds, and diindoyl methane is not a sulfur compound, but it is something made in sulfur metabolism. So the precursor is a sulfonated. I forget exactly the biochemistry, but maybe I don't know. It gives me like GI symptoms and not a fever, but a feeling like a body feelings like a flu, like a kind of achy body dizziness, weird stuff. Anyway, so
I've never taken that much of it. I have it and I've taken it, but I don't never taken. What is that? You said so almost 3 or 4 capsules. I don't think I only would just take one. I think. Yeah, I've been there, done that. My days of like going full retard on supplements, and I'm really careful with it now. I try not to over to do anything, man.
yeah, well, so many supplements that I take, I don't notice anything. So I've gotten it into my head that
And
I
that
was
too.
just used to like, oh, I'll try this, I'll try that. And then this is a
Hmm.
new thing for me. It's actually a negative effect. Uh,
Mm.
uh,
Yeah, there was that whole school of thought too, with like Charles Poliquin too, where it would be like, because he would sell his own supplements, right? He had a huge line of supplements, like fucking everything you could ever think
mhm.
of, and because he was one of those first guys to like really monetize on that. Like he had a, what was called biosignature. It was his own program of measuring your body fat basically, but he had his own program. So you would measure specific sites, then you would put it into the program, and then the program would tell you where you are more. Let's say you have more belly fat, that means you are more cortisol dominant, or you have more back fat, you're more estrogen dominant, and then so that would go along with like, oh, what kind of supplements you should take in order to deal with these things, right?
Uh,
So he was like super big. So it was really smart, right?
mhm.
Because you like, oh, this is the one. You got to take a lot of these. And so yeah, it would be like, how much supplements? He would ask you, like, oh, how much did you take? And I'm like 500 milligrams. And, oh, that's nothing. You got to take at least 5 grams to feel anything. And I'll just be like, all right.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I'm done. I might try an IV drip of NAC just to
Mm.
experiment to see if it was a gut effect that like of the
Hmm.
absorption through the gut and maybe like with some bacterial products or something, or if it's just elevated blood NAC that makes me feel sick. I think that might be worth doing. And in a related question, somebody asked that I mentioned wanting to
Mm.
supplement with carnitine. Why is that? I thought people took it to increase fatty acid oxidation. Uh, yeah, I want to take it IV. I keep forgetting to just sign up for an appointment to one of the local places that do IV drips here, but I want to take it to see if I could get any kind of like low grade sort of PED type effect from the androgen receptor modulation
No.
stuff that you get from that. But you need a high dose, and you need a high dose that you can't get orally because the
And it has to be, yeah, it has to be. The bodybuilders say it work, but fuck, man, they take so much shit too. Who knows what's really
and by the
working?
way, increasing fatty acid oxidation comes from testosterone, but it's like you basically kind of want as much fatty acid oxidation as you can get at rest in the muscles, because that's sort of related to their metabolic rate. That's different than the liver and other tissues that are, and the muscle while it's working. So yeah, fatty acid oxidation is only bad in the context of a tissue that is being switched to fatty acid oxidation from glucose when it sort of prefers glucose, which is, again, it's kind of like a weird shorthand thing that people just think is bad without the context.
Yeah.
Let me just get through. So there's a few comments here. Saw Sean Baker's diet the last week: 24 eggs and 2.5 pounds of ribeye, 400 grams of protein. I guess that's how he can do workout and still have enough protein for non-gluconeogenesis. That and some testosterone. Yeah, I've gone back and forth on the Sean Baker, because when I first saw him and his age and like his lift stats and stuff, I was like, okay, well, this guy's definitely using something. And then he has a really documented history of being a natural powerlifting athlete. And he seems like he has integrity, even though I don't.
And he's
even though I don't agree with him.
And he's been doing it for 40 fucking years, right? Exactly. I don't agree with him. I do think he's honest.
But he posted testosterone levels a while ago, and they were really low.
And then they were higher, right? He did it again.
Yeah, and he was so I guess that it can be transient, but he was saying low test doesn't matter, and that he was kind of giving that like, well, all of the blood levels are based on people that eat a standard American diet. So if you eat a really divergent diet like me, these numbers don't mean anything. It's like, that's not true, man. Like, a lot of the blood numbers, they're just like, there's certain parameters that they need to be, and it doesn't matter what your diet is. Like, you can't have drastically different like blood sodium or pH or
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure. Because you might be dead.
Yeah, like it's there's some things like
But
cholesterol.
I
guess
he did post a second time, and it was more closer or within the normal range. I think his idea was just that they fluctuate. I remember him saying that, and which they do,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, and you can affect it. If you stay up all night and party and fucking eat a whatever, a bean burrito from 7-Eleven, and then go get your testosterone checked, like, I guarantee it'll be lower or lower-ish, and vice versa. If you get a bunch of sleep and then measure it in the morning, which it's the highest. Depends on who, of course, but yeah. So I don't know. I believe him. And again, people forget that like there's people that get into working out, you know what I mean, and they've been doing it for a year, and they're like, holy fuck, like, wow, I look different, I feel different. Then they've been doing it for like 5 years. They're like, wow, like this is great, You got to understand, like, there's people that have been working out for real, not just like going to the gym and getting on the bike, and sitting on your ass and watching fucking, YouTube. There's people that have been really working out like hard almost every single session for 20, 30, 40 years. And that shit does stay with you, of course. You know what I mean? Like, and he's one of those guys. He was a rugby player. He was in the fucking Scottish, what do they call them? The Olympics or whatever? When they throw the fucking logs and all that shit. What do they call that thing? Yeah, he did that. He was like a competitive fucking rugby player.
Yeah, he has the athletic credentials to make a pretty good claim to being a natural athlete and all that stuff. But
yeah, like I'm saying, even if he was back then on testosterone or not, my point is, it's still, he's been pushing himself and he's really good. He's been doing it. He's obviously not just some guy, because it's gonna, you're not gonna. If you haven't worked out for 10 years and you get on TRT, like, you're still probably going to be weaker than dudes that have been working out for 20 years or 30 years. You're probably going to, chances are.
Yeah, and also with powerlifting, it's like a whole different kind of thing than bodybuilding with what the benefits you can get. Okay, so let's just get into this topic. There's some people asking a bunch of random questions.
Is it about
no,
these?
No. I bet Sean adds chocolate and honey in the new year. If he's one of the last dominoes to fall, although there was some guy that I sort of had a spat with on Instagram last week or 2 weeks ago, some doctor, some surgeon who's like, a carnivore, and he's like, oh, all these carnivores getting off the diet, they're stupid because
Oh yeah. You wrote a really nice little
fructose
piece.
is
You
the
should
same
say some of
thing
these
as ethanol metabolism, because aldehydes and stuff. It's like, okay.
It's really funny, right, to watch some people that are like still 2001 fructose science or whatever.
Somebody said ignore the chat, but I'm going to just do one more because this is another good transition. Do you know anything about growth plate fusion and how to influence that? Well, that is one of the things covered in the Body Electric.
By Robert O. Becker. Can we transition
Yes,
or
yeah,
what? Because I did wanted to
yeah.
say, I think we have a thing for dudes that look like Ray Pete. Have you seen a picture of Robert
Not
Becker?
recently.
Gray hair, aviator glasses, like that style of clear aviator glasses, kind of hairline that starts like halfway up his head, massive head. We have like fucking Buteyko, which is, the Ukrainian breathing guy. Then you have fucking Robert O'Becker, Ray Pete. What is it with us and guys that look like that, huh? You pulled up a
Yeah, well,
picture?
this is just what scientists looked like in the 20th century. Like they were just all like white guys.
Gray hair.
Yeah, they like starting kind of in their 50s when they would get a lot of renown. Yeah. No,
So
it's
funny.
normal.
It's normal.
So do you have an overview of the
You want me to give an overview? No, you better give us an overview, bro, because this is the first time. I was telling you, I read this shit. I don't know, way earlier than 2016, maybe 2008, something like that. Like I said, for me, it was during my aura, like I said, crystal healing, those sort of days. Sort of, and even back in the day, it reminded me of a lot of stuff. Well, whatever. We're just getting.
Somebody
into it.
said being a
It
scientist
reminded
is
me.
stressful. That's why they go bald.
Well, not bald, but they just, like have just massive hairline, like or
I'm taking the
foreheads, and then
Pepsi
like their
challenge on
hairline.
that one.
What do you mean? What's the challenge?
You don't know what the
Pepsi and milk?
No,
Milk?
no, no. I'm saying so I'm a scientist and I'm going to say I'm not going to go bald like that. So I'm almost 40. But no, the Pepsi challenge is alludes to Pepsi. They had a marketing campaign because Coke is always a little bit ahead of Pepsi. It's like Coke, Pepsi. And they were like, a lot of people like Coke just because it says Coke. So they did a blindfolded taste test, and a lot of and they
Okay.
demonstrated that a lot of people preferred Pepsi if they didn't know what it was, and that's called the Pepsi challenge.
Is that true? Was that really
It's
true?
true
Do you
that they
think?
did that. They said they did it.
Was that a double-blind placebo or what? Huh?
I don't think it was double blind because um,
Was this in the days when they were trying to do the Pepsi Clear? Like
no,
whenever it
that
was
was
like white,
the
like
Pepsi challenge. I think was the 80s or maybe the early 90s, and then the
it's like real fucking old school.
clear Pepsi was, well, I guess it was probably 93. I remember it. Crystal Pepsi, which was clear.
Dude,
Yeah.
I didn't have Pepsi until I was like, I don't know, bro. I was like almost a teenager. It's the first time I ever, or Pepsi, Pepsi for sure I haven't had. I meant a Coca-Cola. We would get in Russia, the first importing of Russian Coca-Cola or American Coca-Cola to Russia was the glass bottles, and not these ones that are now this Mexican bottle ones that are like bigger than my fucking leg. The little
Yeah,
glass
yeah, yeah,
plastic
yeah.
bottles of Coca-Cola. We would buy that, and I had two best friends, and we would split that bottle, three of us. That's how we would drink Coke. It was like, yeah, this is so good. It was delicious.
Somebody asked, do you believe in large royal frogs that fly across the sky? Oh,
What?
do I believe in astronauts? I believe in astronauts. I have a firm belief in astronauts. I believe in them.
What are you? Oh, what are you trying to say though? Do you believe they go to space though, Kyle, or not? I'm
It's like
curious.
if they say they're going to do something, I believe in them. You know what I mean? I'm a bit of
Okay.
a space is real
Hmm.
kind of guy.
Pretty tough, bro. Pretty tough.
Space. I like space. I like the concept of space, and it certainly would
Then
be. It would be. Well, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out
So
together.
you would chase Buzz Aldrin down the street yelling at him that admit it, admit it, admit it
Well,
before getting punched in the
the
face.
moon landing, as such, the one that was on
Oh,
TV, is to
uh-huh.
me the most sus thing about
Uh-huh.
astronautics.
Hmm.
Ray implies the moon landing may not have happened. Well, I just did that as well. I think
Yeah,
either it
when a
didn't
lot of
happen
YouTube videos.
or
Hmm.
it happened, but well, okay, one thing that we know for sure is that it was compiled in there was footage that was not from the moon that was filmed beforehand that was originally put out as moon landing footage in addition to what they claim was moon landing footage.
Hmm.
So at the very least, they had filmed footage. Maybe like if the thing blew up or whatever, they would have just used all fake footage. Like that's why they got. I think that's why they said they did it. So at the very least, not fake footage was presented to the public as moon landing footage. In addition to what they still maintain. So in other words, they were challenged about pieces of footage and admitted some of it was fake, but maintained
Mm.
that the majority of it was real. So that's at least, and of course, all of the like lost data and the blah 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 blah. But that could all have. I mean, stranger things have happened. So
Yeah. So could that be a case of maybe they actually went to the moon, but they didn't actually film anything there, and it was all fake, or some of it was
that's a
real from the moon and
possibility.
some of it was.
Or maybe they
Mm.
just got
Mm.
a little tiny bit of footage, or
Mm.
I
No
don't
one
know.
knows.
Was it directed by Stanley Kubrick? If it was directed, then it was probably directed by Stanley Kubrick. All right,
Mm.
so let's get
Yeah.
back to the. So I'm just going to go over this sort of structure of the book, The Body Electric. It's written by a doctor, an orthopedic surgeon,
Hmm.
and I believe his post was primarily at a VA hospital. I think he had a few
Hmm.
different posts, but that's where most of his clinical work.
The first chapter is kind of, it's not really about the book, but I like how he talked about, he kind of remembers the days before penicillin and all that. It's kind of interesting to read about that.
Yes. Somebody just posted a comment in Cyrillic, so I can't.
How can I access it?
I mean, you could open it on your
Probably just like,
phone, and
fuck
yeah,
yeah.
I don't.
Oh, I see, I
I
see, I
can't
see.
even.
Okay, go ahead.
So
Go ahead, brother. I'll pull it up.
So yeah, so the intro, let's see, I have some notes here. Lamentations on the seeming plateau for healing achieved in current mainstream medicine. So he goes into the conservatism of doctors in medicine and the biology research, and
Hmm.
he says, as you mentioned, the penicillin. He says that the success of penicillin kind of laid the foundation for sort of a no pun intended, ossification of the field. Let's see. He said,
The comment just says "Привет, привет,"
yeah,
and then it says, and then somebody, and then some fucking obviously American guy, I think it's Mr. Evan, says "Какие," which just means which. That's it. All right, good talk.
so
Yes, I'm
that's
sorry to
fine.
interrupt.
Yeah, it's hard for anyone who hasn't lived through the transition to realize the change that penicillin wrought, a disease with a mortality rate near 50% that killed almost 100,000 Americans each year, suddenly could be
Hmm.
cured without fail. The philosophical result, so I'm jumping around because I took some notes here. The philosophical result of chemical medicine's success has been belief in the capital technological capital fix. Drugs became the best or only valid treatment for all ailments: prevention, nutrition, exercise, lifestyle, the patient's physical and mental uniqueness, environmental pollutants, all were glossed over. Even today, after so many years and millions of dollars spent for negligible results, it's still assumed that the cure for cancer will be a chemical that kills malignant cells without harming healthy ones. And then I quoted this in particular. As surgeons become more adept at repairing bodily structures or replacing them with artificial parts, the technological faith came to include the idea that a transplanted kidney, a plastic heart valve, or a stainless steel and Teflon hip joint was just as good as the original, or even better because it wouldn't wear out as fast. The idea of a bionic human was the natural outgrowth of the rapture over penicillin. If a human is merely a chemical machine, then the ultimate human is a robot. And so I wrote in the margins, transhumanism as a reaction to real medical successes. So often people will talk about transhumanism in our like
Hmm.
on online spaces as sort of like a evil elite satanic goal to blah blah blah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What book was this written, by the way? What year was this written? I don't know that. Oh, 1985. Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of getting close to computer age.
If so the transhumanism thing, like, be that whatever, goals this or that person may have, the thing that either allowed it or propelled it, to happen were real medical successes. In the sense, like, there would be no way to propose a bionic human or a blah 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 if surgical techniques to replace limbs with metal or chemical treatments and all this kind of stuff didn't work. So there's kind of has to be this foundation of reality. In other words, if somebody has an idea that they're pushing, and whether or not they have nefarious motives in some other realm, they have to build their thing on top of reality. They can't push something that's not real. So like, like the metaverse, if we didn't have like the internet and enough bandwidth to actually support whatever structures, then it wouldn't be proposed. Yeah. So in other words, the idea follows the reality of the tools that are available. And in medicine, it's very tool driven, and biology. So what is able to be done physically drives the ideas more than the other way around.
And do you think that people wouldn't be? Okay, well, go ahead.
So he goes on from here in these Lamentations, and he eventually goes through mythological and then historical examples of human and animal regeneration. And by mythological, I mean the Medusa of Heracles.
That was a big one.
And the liver of Prometheus. And that's an interesting one because that he mentions, and I agree, that suggests that the Greeks, because they picked that organ, or, the writer picked that organ as ones who regenerate every day and then be plucked out by a crow or whatever it was, as an endless torture for giving humans fire, which there's a lot in there, but it suggests that they knew medically, perhaps from very early surgery or dissection.
Yeah, it doesn't seem random that he just
right, and the liver
right?
is the one organ that like will reliably grow. It'll grow in pathology, so it'll just get bigger than it's supposed to get sometimes, and it can regrow, for example, like more than the kidney or the heart.
Like it's not going to just grow bigger. Those other organs
not as much. The liver is kind of the king of regrowth.
Yeah, is it the king? Yeah, I was going to say anything else that would regrow. I have heard of some stories of thyroid growing larger, but I don't
anything
know.
Can grow as a tumor.
Not like in that.
Right.
Yeah, not as a tumor is what I'm saying. Regrow as in a good way. That's about it though, right? As far as organs are concerned.
I mean, there's like enlarged prostate,
right?
But
skin. Did you know that the skin is the largest organ in the human body, Kyle? The skin regrows every day.
Somebody's asking why there's no super chats. I think it's because the channel's not monetized, and I think it's probably like follower count, or I haven't even looked into how to monetize this account.
You probably have to have 1,000 or
something.
Well, you're close to that, aren't you? You got to be out there now.
A little over 800.
You're getting fucking gonna be freaking brushing that money, that super chat money off your shoulders.
It's right around the corner. So, and then he gives historical examples, like they're just examples from, in war. There's a lot of data because a leader, like a field commander, will pull a bunch of injured men off of the field, and once in a while there'll be something really weird, like a guy who has a really bad injury that either usually needs amputation or he's just going to die, just recovers and sort of heals like as if it wasn't that big of a injury.
And so since we're talking about it, also he later in the book, right, much later, he talks about the chopped finger of little kids regrowth, right? Like, but there's like a certain line, right?
It's the kind curve of funny, of the
right?
first
like if it's
knuckle.
Like the first. I was gonna say if it's above the first knuckle, you're good. But if it's like the whole finger,
exactly.
No.
Yeah,
good.
Ray talked about that. He talked about how he knew a girl or something when he was a kid who got her finger chopped off, and instead of treating it,
I love Ray's and him when he was little and little girls stories. Those are the best. Like him and his babysitter.
Yeah.
I legit was listening to that in my car, just fucking
This
howling
is an
by
old one
myself. I
because
was just
I
sitting
actually
there.
don't. I haven't kept up with all of his new content. So
Which one? The one that you're
yeah,
talking
the one
about,
I'm
or the
talking about.
babysitter
Any
one?
Ray story I'm gonna tell
You
is
t-
probably from podcast content like 2017 and before, because that's when I was.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I listen to I think probably most of
Mhm.
them, if not all, or close to it. But have you heard the
Yeah, no, you
babysitter
told me
one?
about it. You
No,
told me
it,
about
it
it.
was more. Oh yeah, okay,
But
okay. It's
yeah, so
fucking
this
great.
girl just they put like a cap on the thing, just like a, I don't know, like a
Hmm.
plastic cap, just like a cap. Yeah,
Like a
like it,
fake
not a
one.
fake finger,
Uh
but just
huh.
like a
Uh huh.
cap. Like almost like a thimble.
Hmm.
And they took it off, you know, 2 3 months or whatever, and the finger had just regrown, like fingernail and everything.
Fucking
So
crazy,
that's
right?
sort of a understood and accepted thing. And he gives a definition of regeneration specifically,
Hmm.
and then he goes into animal research that he and other people have done, and then he goes into some clinical stuff. And it's all kind of peppered
Hmm.
throughout with different anecdotes of like his problems with funding and with the getting things published and people that don't want to believe it. So regeneration
Hmm.
for him is when a tissue, like a terminal tissue, like a finger, whatever, there's a de-differentiation of tissue near an injury that forms like a new growth plate, which is called a blastema, and then that divides and differentiates again into the normal structures and the different diverse structures. So, like you need to, if you're repairing a finger or a leg or whatever, you need to get bone, muscle, blood vessels, nerves, skin, some connective tissue,
Hmm.
and that it all it and so that's generally considered impossible, especially in mammals. Is that
Hmm.
once your cells have differentiated, like the epidermis, the skin, it can't like become bone. It can't.
Hmm.
And if you go down, 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 sort of the evolutionary ladder into
Like,
salamanders, they just have like pretty
gets
much
easier and easier,
total
right?
regeneration.
Well, there's like salamanders, then what? Like
For
one before worms. What's before
planaria,
worms?
well,
Planaria? Is that what
planaria
it
is
is?
another one
No,
that.
not. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. After worms. I'm saying between salamander and worms, or is it just salamander? Remember that there's a little graph where he kind of just shows like
Oh,
worm something, salamander, like the regenerative power goes up, but then humans is like the opposite, right? The farther back we go, the
yeah,
less we
I don't
have.
remember that exact figure, but it's like frogs have
Well,
partial
sorry.
regeneration, and
Maybe
then
it
when
was
you get into
frogs. Maybe it
mammals,
was
it's
frogs.
pretty bad. Like the only regeneration we really
Mhm.
have, which we do have, is the bone. So bone marrow cells will de-differentiate and redifferentiate into everything that's needed to repair a bone if it goes right. And then sometimes it doesn't go right. So that's where he started his clinical research. Somebody said, I
Mhm.
remember Ray saying if a finger chip got chopped off, you could wrap it airtight and it would regenerate hair and nail. It was saying nail and all. Uh, yeah, that's true if you're a kid, and I on also if it's beyond the first joint. So, but other than that,
Mhm.
it's kind of sketchy. Maybe that's happened here and there. And if you implant a battery in the,
Mhm.
then
What?
maybe you could get something going. So that's where. Well, okay. First of all, so in order to get to the human stuff, so what his ultimate goal is to first treat non-mending bones. So people that have a really bad fracture and the bones don't re-knit, and that's basically the limb has to be amputated. So this happens once in a while. So he's like, okay,
Mhm.
can we figure out what goes right in bone healing and fix what's going wrong so that people never have to have amputations for fractures that don't heal. And then he went from there. And so he had a couple different directions. He went into animals that have complete and total regeneration, not just of bone, but just of the whole thing, because he wanted to be like, okay, what's driving this? And he used salamanders and a couple other things, but salamanders were the big thing. And
That's probably the biggest one, right? There's nothing that has the same amount of
well, there's the
ability as
Hydra,
salamanders, eh?
because there was the first scientist
Oh,
that found
wow.
this with that French guy, because he goes into, there's a scientist French names.
Sac de Bolzy. Remember that one guy that has like a name? What is that fucking guy? Oh, it's gonna. Do you know what I'm talking? Oh, it's gonna bother me. You can look it up, and I'm gonna look it up in the meantime. Oh my god, what is it? Is it like?
Well,
Please, what is it?
it doesn't really matter. Um, so Riemer is this
I don't know.
one guy, and
It's
then Tremblay. Okay, that sounds of Geneva. Abraham Tremblay. He cut up these animals that he found in fresh water that ended up being called Tremblay's polyps, and then he called them Hydra because you could cut them up almost like dice them like an onion, and as long as any piece contains some of the root stem, so it had a bunch of branches, sort of like Hydra heads, and as long as you cut off a branch that had some of the stem, it would regenerate to an entire animal. So you could make like 50 hydras, hail Hydra, from
hell high, yeah. Or you could say
yeah.
my favorite playwright.
I thought that's who you were talking about.
Well, I thought it was a scientist, but it's a playwright. I'm so sorry. Honor
Yeah.
de Balzac. Oui. Okay.
There's a Simpsons quote where the principal is like stuck in one of those, those gym bags that you put like the basketballs and volleyballs and stuff in, and he's like trapped in it, and there's a rat that like he's like captured. I guess they had some sort of student revolt, and the principal is captured in this gym sack, and an animal runs up and he's like, "Quick, chew through my ball sack," and the animal just kind of runs away. Okay, so
Never gets.
so he figured out from salamanders. So he started. I forget what his transition was, where he started looking into electricity rather than chemical stuff. Maybe he thought chemicals were sort of being taken care of. So at the time, like he said, with penicillin, it pushed medicine and biological research into the direction that essentially, chemicals are where it's at, and, that's kind of it. And so he found that, first of all, that all animals have a polarity to them, just in normal circumstances. So starting from the center, both the head and the body radiates out, so down and out to the limbs, and negative potential. So it's positive potential in the center and radiates out negative. And so if you measure it just very simply, it's kind of like negative going to the head and positive going down. But then if you get more complex, you can see it's actually negative going out everywhere, including the head. And then he was able to find things like during sleep, the polarity is reversed. And during hypnosis, the same thing happens, which is he ended up developing a way to actually tell if somebody's really hypnotized or just pretending to be hypnotized. So you can measure a change in their brain polarity relating to a normal change in consciousness, like sleep-wake cycles, that will actually change if a person is legitimately under hypnosis versus just pretending to be. And then the same polarity change from anesthesia, whether it's local anesthesia of a limb will change the polarity at the limb, so it'll reverse it. So it'll be the positive potential going out. And this is what he found actually kills the pain, because the nerves aren't able to just relay the pain back. Or general anesthesia will cause the sleep and hypnosis polarity change. And then, so polarity it's when there's two electric poles, so a positive and a negative pole. So
and that's measured. How is he measuring that? I don't remember that bit, man.
Just with electrodes and a meter, just
okay. So you don't
just the same way
okay.
you would
Classic.
measure like an electrical outlet, like what but this is all DC. So in the biological electricity is all direct current. It's not alternating current like most of our devices. So he was able to experimentally induce an anesthetic effect and a consciousness altering effect in animals, an anesthetic effect, I think, in humans by, using magnets and stuff to like force the polarity of themselves either locally or generally to change.
Is it the one that he did on bullfrogs first? Was that the experiment that we're talking
That's
about
one of
now?
them.
Where he was...
Yeah, he was able to change their EEG, like knock down their EEG to a sleep state by just using inducing
Changing
a current with magnets that would like overwhelm their natural one. So he then started looking at the regeneration stuff as well. So he's doing kind of this stuff in tandem. And he noticed that if you cut off the limb of something like a salamander, and then he also compared it to a frog, there will be a switch in polarity. So there's the polarity of like whatever life that's generally a negative potential out from the center out. And then in injury, the polarity of injury is that it reverses. So at the site of injury, it will have a positive potential radiating out. And that's kind of like the injury. And this potential develops, which he also said is the reason why wounds don't always hurt the worst right away. So if sometimes if you have a cut, like you would kind of think logically, okay, it's going to hurt, because nerves don't need much time to relay sensations. So he's like, okay, the cut, let's like kind of rationally should hurt like 100% at the beginning and then maybe go down from there. But what actually happens is you kind of feel it and it sort of hurts and then it starts like throbbing, And that also has to do a little bit with like swelling and things that happen chemically. But he was able to show an electrical component to that, which is that the polarity of injury increases after the insult. So it's like the injury happens, it immediately starts to drop down and kind of continues over time, then stabilizes with a positive potential. And then in the case of, say, a salamander, which can just totally regrow an entire limb, the potential will become less positive over a few days. So it'll kind of heal over like with a stump, an apparent stump, but under that is one of these blastemas that's being formed. And it starts to form after something like a week or whatever. The potential gets back into that negative area at that site of injury. And then from there, it will just regrow an entire arm with the hand and all the bones and everything. It's fine. And go back to having the normal polarity. Whereas a frog only has partial regeneration. So, and he was able to show that it's it stays with that positive potential, the injury potential, for longer, and doesn't go back to the negative potential until after everything's just kind of like scarred over, sort of like what would happen with us. And so frogs, they'll like regrow a little bit, because they're closer to sort of salamanders than us, but they don't regrow all the way. So then he started doing experiments with people. And there was all kinds of weird experiments, like with the planaria worm, cut it in half, and then by directing an artificial current, he was able to, like, instead of having it regrow its tail, so you cut it off and it'll regrow its tail, right? Make it regrow a second head.
It regrow the other side. I remember that.
So, there's all kinds of stuff you can do with that. Or implant, cut off the limb of an animal that can regenerate, and like a frog, and then use the battery. So he started basically using very small batteries, because nerves don't have, like, compared to electronic stuff that we use, right? They don't have a ton of electricity. It's a small amount of electricity, and it's directed, in a place in the body, but apparently it's necessary. So, he started developing batteries that could provide that negative potential after the injury, like the salamander has for the frog, and cause it to have full regrowth like the salamander. And then he found, like, if you put an extra bone in there, it could like actually copy incorrectly, and there's all different kinds of variations. And also, as a matter of fact, I have a little bookmark here because he says something
Tell me
page 50.
Page 50.
So he starts talking about
kinda
organizational territories. A blastema put into a hind limb territory naturally became a hind limb. So he's saying if you could like transplant limbs and make them de-differentiate and grow into the correct location.
There's the picture of you describing the blastema and all that below the salamander's arm.
Yeah. So then he says one attempt at an answer was the idea of a morphogenic field, advanced by Paul Weiss in the 1930s and developed by H.V. Bronsted in the 1950s. Morphogenesis means origin of form, and the field idea was simply an attempt to get closer to the control factor by reformulating the problem. So I just want to point out that's where do you know how Ray says field theory versus gene theory? You ever hear him say that?
Uh-huh.
So that's what he's talking
all
about.
The time.
He's talking about the field theory of like Weiss and Bronsted and others, as opposed to... See, I hate this kind of stuff because I guess the idea is with the gene theory that, I don't know, there's just nothing, like there's no electrical field. I don't even know if those people would say that there's no electrical field involved, because the electrical field, it's coming from the body.
One or the other. Yeah. But I don't, like you said, I don't think people that actually work with this kind of shit would just simply say black or white answer you, right? Like yes or no.
The thing is, like that's the way that Ray talks about it, and
people. And a lot of people, like the terrain theory and all that.
I wrote another sort of quote here about the effect depended on having the proper cells as well as the proper current. White blood cells, skin cells, and other types didn't work. So he's talking about frogs here. The only variation was that the fish cells, this is page 144, despecialized faster and the reptilian cells more slowly. In all erythrocytes, the shift in the transparency and staining characteristics of the nucleus was a point of no return. So he's talking about nucleus changes from these currents. These changes seem to indicate reactivation of the DNA for after where the rest of the process continued, even if we switched off the current. And he also goes on to say that the de-differentiation and redifferentiation method has to do with what genes can be expressed in tissues, right? So like, somebody said they're making the friggin' frogs gay. They're putting electricity in the water.
Putting electricity in the water. Yeah.
So.
Okay. With the DNA thing, explain that to people. What he's trying to, what he's implying.
So normally when you have a tissue like liver cells and even specific sections of the liver, but let's just say liver cells express different proteins. They activate different genes to make different proteins than muscle cells or, brain cells, nervous tissue, skin cells. Okay. And this is more or less a one-way street. Like you can't, they have this, they've been somehow communicated to that they are, they're repressed, which I'd actually like to make an analogy here because the simpler if you go back in you could say in evolution, simpler animals and then organisms like plants and eventually to bacteria, they have less differentiation. So bacteria has none, right? Bacteria is just a cell. It's a one-stop shop. It doesn't have tissues. It doesn't even have it's multi-cells, right? So its genome is completely repressed. It is not repressed. Okay, and it's not. There's no.
What do you mean by that?
It expresses all of its DNA in its cell, right? It uses it for its single-celled life, right? And then when you get into plants and animals that have tissues, in order to have a complex structure, you need to have repression. So not everybody can do everything. So it's kind of like, I guess you could call it specialization of labor, or
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. I was just
it's
gonna say that. So things are
specifically
kind
done
of
by
spread out.
repressing.
Okay.
So you're not adding, you're actually taking away. So every one of our cells has the entire genome. So if you take like, like 23andMe, you spit into a tube, so it's like mouth stuff in your saliva.
Mm-hmm.
You could take blood cells, you could biopsy anything, and it has your entire genome. You could genotype yourself as long as it's, intact or whatever. So it's not that these cells only have the genes to make skin cell proteins. It's that all of them are repressed except the characteristic skin cell proteins. And these tissues are segregated. So in other words, to have a more complex entity involves repression of ancestral biological drives and segregation of these different. I just like to kind of, people can draw like a comparison like to civilization if they so choose. But people keep saying super chat. Like what? I can't. I don't know how.
I don't know. What do you do? Oh, we're not that famous yet.
So in other words, this is just like a little, like there is no such thing as field theory that doesn't include gene theory.
There you go.
In the sense
there
that you
go.
can't,
This is
you can apply an electrical field. You can apply any electrical field you want to a piece of material that does not have a functioning genome and the cellular machinery to express proteins from it, and it won't do anything. Okay?
Yes.
Okay. Now, having said that,
good. Seriously,
it's also true that if you took a cell that was had an intact nucleus with all of its DNA, whether it's a bacterial cell all the way up to a human tissue cell, and I guess artificially countered its natural electrical polarity, you could probably prevent it from expressing its genome. So there's a system of it's our nervous system. So everything is being so the ability of it's like you start with an embryo turns into was a blastoma, and it's like 1 cell, 2 cells, 4, blah, 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 blah. And then they start differentiating into the different crests, right? The neural crest, and they start making a spot to make nerve tissue to eventually become the spinal cord in us, the notochord in invertebrates, the epidermal layer, and the whole thing, right? And what's happening at that time is it'd be nice if we could measure the currents of that. Yeah, but so there's some kind of spatio-orienting.
Can they?
Well, I think that's been done in some.
Since then, because I don't remember that.
Well, he's not really interested in embryogenesis.
Yeah. I get it. Oops, sorry, but I was thinking
it's probably been done
that to no.
It's just
okay.
Like you couldn't really do it on a human fetus that much, but so maybe there's a technology to more remotely measure potentials that would be extremely useful. So anyway, the cells themselves will have an electrical potential. So even a bacterial cell, right, will have an electrical potential. And multicellular organisms, there's something about the electrical potential that can spatio-orient the expression of, cell division, cell placement, and differentiation through repression and eventual segregation of tissues. And then the notochord, which became the spinal cord, which is just a big old, like most electrical cell type that you could have, a big highway of that, is like the ultimate expression of this spatio-orienting electrical field that controls the ability to express or not express certain genes in the genome. Somebody asked, how much does electricity change the DNA code? It doesn't change the DNA code. It just tells a cell, like, you can't use this 95% of the code. You can only use this 5%. Like a hair follicle or something. Like it's like, here's your stuff that you can do. And the cells know that by their neighbors and by something having to do with the assistance of this electrical field that is being expressed mainly through nervous tissue, but also at a smaller scale just from cells themselves, which also have potentials. So this would be kind of like this is how life works thing that Becker expresses. And he expresses it for the most part through the desire to just clinically achieve regrowth of like lost limbs and stuff for people. And he picks up on the obvious. So plants, for example, I mean, plants can regenerate. Like you can just cut. There's so many plants that you could just cut a branch off and like plant it and make a plant. Like not even by seed. You know, that's a major way of propagation. And then the lower animals and then the higher animals kind of lose this, which gets to. So that's basically the book. There is a last section where he talks about EMF pollution. And
like everything from cars
right,
to
he really doesn't like the
microwaves,
powerful
all kinds
radio
of stuff.
transmitters of specific. He has specific frequencies that he thinks are particularly damaging and specific intensities. And obviously,
Power lines outside your windows and around your homes and whatever apartment buildings, all that stuff.
So yeah, I think that that's pretty legit stuff. But the problem is, you really do get a lot of people that world has a lot of stuff that I think is not super thoroughly vetted.
Dude, it's so confusing. Is what you're trying to say.
Well, there's a lot of people that will make
it's
products
insane.
And just say this protects you from
EMF. That will make a meter that measures. Or also like meters that measure something and that go into the red, but what are they measuring?
And it could be that they're measuring something real, but I don't think. And the problem is there's real, no funding for like, because it's almost like the way our system controls. Like, say you didn't want to say, well, it really sucks that like 5% of the population is gonna perhaps have like diabetes or cancer because of these three sources of EMF pollution that wouldn't have otherwise, or something like that. But haha, sorry, we're just not going to do it. We're just not going to change it. Like, sorry, I'd really like to, but haha, no, I'm not going to. They don't want to do that. So what they just do is just, there's no science that says that, and it's like, it's like, would you like to fund that? And they're like, well, no, because there's really nothing suggesting that there's anything there. So why even look into it? Like, this is, and there's a lot of ways you can goose the. So like, I know some professors that I work with that are on study sections, they're called, at the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, and it's just like a round table. I guess they do them virtually now. They used to go down to DC and just hang out there for a week, and they would get like 1 million grants through this institute or this institute, for like heart research or diabetes or whatever, or really basic science. And there'd be rounds. So there'd be like, your grant wasn't discussed, it sucks. Then there'd be, your grant was discussed and it made it to the first round, and there's like a second round, and then there's like 10% of them or something would end up getting funded. So there's a lot of ways to
do you know who Anthony J is?
Yes.
I mentioned him sometimes about his book, Regeneration. Yeah. Well, he just recently quit the Mayo Clinic. He was a scientist at the Mayo Clinic. And he has a pretty good video out about just like, he mentions some of that grant stuff, just like how fucking stupid it is, for lack of a better term. Just how the stuff that happens, the stuff that doesn't get researched just because of that. Like you said, they don't want to give you money or whatever. They just don't like you, basically. Or if you're trying to, do something different that doesn't go, doesn't go along with the mainstream, it's just like, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. When crazy, I was more in I kind of got like less, that was originally going to be the topic of like the book that I've been working on forever, is that kind of stuff, and how it's just really bad, like with the government funding research. But I don't really feel that way anymore. It's a little bit more complicated, but yeah, there's definitely, well, because basically if it was funded privately, I don't think, if we just changed it from public to private, nothing would really be solved. There's kind of a more like deeper philosophical problem with the sciences at this time.
Sure.
And so my thinking has changed on that. But yeah, there's all kinds of awful, I mean, if you go, I've gone to.
Well, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think it's black and white.
I've gone to PubMed before, and they'll have this is like 3 years ago. I should have taken a screenshot, but sometimes they'll have a highlighted research on the bottom of the page. Like you go to ncbi dot whatever it is, And it was like it was a study on like how soon lesbians move in with each other or something like that. You know, it's like a stereotype in that community. Like, oh, what do you bring to a second date as a lesbian? A U-Haul? You ever heard that? For some reason,
Yeah,
women that
sure.
date other women just move, like it gets really domestic really fast. It's like, fine, I don't even have an opinion. It's just like, did we need to spend $500,000 on that? Because I could have just told you that, you know? And I'm not even like, I'm not even adjacent to that community. I've just heard some things, but apparently they're, so, and then, you know, Becker's stuff where he's growing, he's fixing. Okay. So actually, before we leave the phenomenal world and enter the sublime, there's the one clinical or the one actually patient outcome that he has, which is really nice, is I think the guy was in the military and he had a double fracture. So both of his legs were fractured, but one was lower and one was higher. So he was in a double leg cast, you know, couldn't do anything for like a long time. And the lower fracture, as you might expect, mended correctly, and the higher one did not. So, you know, he's in the hospital, like discharged, you know, for 1 year, 2 years, whatever, just like in a big ass cast, and he can't do anything, and he's super depressed, like getting almost suicidal every day, just being like, well, it's one day closer to when they tell me they're gonna have to remove my leg, you know? And so somehow Becker becomes apprised of this patient's situation, and he goes, look, you know, I've got this thing that I'm working on with animals and stuff, super untested. It could grow, because one of his worries is it could grow tumors, because you're causing cells to grow. That's basically a de-differentiating cells. If they don't redifferentiate, that's a tumor. You know, because a tumor cell, which is another kind of offshoot philosophically of this whole research, is kind of like a cell that gets out of that control as it goes off the reservation and sort of de-differentiates into something much more vestigial and ancestral, and just starts dividing as if it's almost a bacteria. And it's just, who cares? Like, we don't have to make tissues. We don't have to work towards the common good, which,
uncontrollably growing.
People can draw analogies civilizationally towards that if they choose. And so the guy's like, no, totally try it. I really don't want to lose my leg. You know what I mean? Like, I'm willing to take quite a bit of risk here. So they implant a battery at the fracture that will provide, you know, a negative current outward as, you know, the polarity of repair. And he also had infections. There was also some antimicrobial work that Becker did with this stuff, where he was able to show that positive ions, I think it was positive ions, kill bacteria. And they all...
Is it positive or negative? Because you know how they always say you want negative ions to be released
into
the
he was talking about silver.
I don't know. I'm
specifically using a electrical current to, on silver, insert it into a wound that has an infection that would like shoot out silver ions. And and the reason why I know it's positive is because he actually said, oh, well, if I do this, it'll sort of retard the growth because it'll oppose the negative current of the helium battery a little bit. But what happened was to stabilize the joints, that guy had stuff drilled into him, and there was infections at some of the holes of the drilling. So the really bad ones on the one side, they were able actually to knock out the infection. And it was like a persistent infection. Like, there was just an infection in his muscle and bone a little bit in this little drill site for like over a year. Becker was also worried that if he goes in with the surgery, he could disturb that infection, and then it could spread and just end up having to take the limb off anyway from sepsis. So there was all kinds of risks, but he did it. And the guy, his bone healed and mended together, and he started walking, and then he left the hospital, and he basically never came back. He had follow-up appointments. He just skipped them. And he came back like a year or two later and was just like, yeah, it's
just like, thanks, see ya.
So he came back eventually and was just like, hey, it totally worked. And Becker was like, oh, do you want us to, like, you know, get rid of, like, there was like some follow-up stuff he could have done. And the guy was just like, nah, I'm really good.
I'm good.
So that was like basically his best success. And as far as I know, that is not the standard of care for people with unmending fractures, or perhaps it should be the standard of care for any fracture that is serious enough, especially in older people. But so it's a real shame. And yeah, at the end of the book, he talks about this research stuff. Obviously, the stuff about the EMF pollution was not popular to fund because it's just like you're basically telling the government and companies that they either have to just not put up certain communication lines or maybe spend more money, use a different frequency. You know what I mean? It's just like give a shit about the bad things that could happen instead of just going full.
Yeah. Well, it would change the things that we use and don't use dramatically.
Like in Europe, they don't use certain types of plasticizers because they are endocrine disruptors.
You know, I went down. So when I was telling you when I was into super chakra aura stuff, that's when I was really into my Paul Chek kind of stuff.
Paul Chakra.
And Paul Chakra phase. Yeah. And he brought up one time he actually mentioned the body electric, and he brought up that he found some research back in the Soviet Union that talked about that there was a certain limit to how close they could have power lines close to homes, and I actually went down that rabbit hole. This was, like I said, 10 years ago or plus, and I actually did find it was all written in Russian though, so I don't know what he found in English or if somebody translated it for him, but I did find some shit like that in Russian, and I thought it was really interesting. But again, this was like 1974 or something. Like it was in the 70s, okay. And it was really interesting, yeah. And I was like, wow, it's true that they did have these certain limitations of how close you can put power lines. Because I mean, now it's like, I'm sure now in Russia that shit's long gone because it's trying to be more of a Western country, anyways. But yeah, like as far as goes here, like I can almost touch mine outside of my window,
Yeah, probably not.
So I don't know.
Probably not the best.
We're fucked.
I mean, what you could do, especially if you owned your own place, you could kind of build a Faraday cage. Like embed the walls with enough of a metal netting that would, it would keep out wireless. So you'd have to like, if you wanted to use the internet and stuff, you'd have to have like a hardwired Ethernet in and then
get out of it. Well, they have those canopies now. Have you seen those little tents that you just like hang above your bed? Basically, you can almost like have like a little, like chicks sometimes have these like white whatever like
pyramid over their head, like on some.
Yeah. But like a Faraday pyramid that's just hanging above your bed. Imagine bringing a girl home and just like walking into your bedroom and showing her that. She's gonna be like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, no, girls would think it's cool. They'd be like, "Oh my god, are you Wicca?"
Depends how it looks, my man. If it's gray, if it looks like a Faraday cage, that texture, that gray weird ass texture that it is. I don't know. You put like a little axe on it, draw it with some blood or something. They would love that.
So I'm gonna just catch up with the chat real quick before we get back. Somebody said no need for epigenetics. I think that this stuff works in tandem with epigenetics. So epigenetics, this is within the lifespan of an individual. I should say so particularly like from embryogenesis through fetal development and adult and maturation, the differentiation of tissues and the repression of certain genes, that's not like a generational thing. Like everybody, if their growth is normal, will go through that same thing. Whereas epigenetics is actually something that attempts to repress the expression of a gene transgenerationally. So I lived in a very stressful starvation period, so certain metabolic genes may be altered, not at the level of the DNA code, but at the level of the ability to unwind and express that code for my children and perhaps my grandchildren. So it's like a different, it has a different time scale of effect. This is something that has to do with like the span of a single life form, not multi-generations.
Not far down, right?
How much Kyle, do you currently use any of Hydra's products? Right at this exact second, no. I don't remember the last time I did. I was thinking of getting some vitamin E because I don't think I have any vitamin E. I have a bottle, like a squeeze thing that it's like a vitamin E oil.
Squirt.
And I just haven't really been taking like oral vitamin E for a while, so I might. Do you use any of his stuff at this time?
I have never tried it. No.
Any of Hydra's products at all?
No, nothing. I should. I will.
I wasn't expecting
I
an
will.
answer. I've used, I've bought stuff and I just, supplements, like I was saying before, I had these 2 supplements recently that I tried that actually gave me a negative effect. But other than that, I think one time I took a bottle of pregnenolone, like I just got it and started taking it, and I think it had a anabolic effect for me. Like I didn't change anything else in my routine. I just kind of like gained a few pounds, and it sort of corresponded to like muscle measurements.
Body composition.
Somebody said,
It's hard. It's really hard to figure out what you're how, like you said, you would have to literally stick to that routine, and it's fucking hard. And hey, man, your sleeping routine week to week is different. You know what I mean? Like you have a little bit more work, you have a little bit less work. There's so many variables. Well, bro,
I have a pretty chaotic.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, well, the other thing is I see a lot of supplements, especially something like vitamin E, as a long-term thing. It's like if you take vitamin E when you're 60, like in your 30s, until your 60s, like maybe you don't have sunspots, which, correspondingly would have an internal negative component as well. It's not like you're going to feel better that day. Now, maybe some people do, but my view.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a firm believer that they don't. It's just a placebo.
Well, if somebody takes like
so I don't know.
You can feel it that day, Like a woman,
Like
like
who?
if a woman has
Like,
so-called estrogen dominant.
Like if you talk to like balanced women that are like not like super into health stuff that have taken it and were like, wow. I feel
Yeah, well, I've
completely
gotten
different.
a lot of, it has a sedative effect, like a calming, basically an acute calming effect. Like they can feel that it's like a drug, it's like a drug. They took it as like a drug.
Like it's really interesting to pay attention to people that are not into health stuff.
Because they're not going to lie.
They don't have a because, well, it's not like I'm saying they're lying on purpose, but I'm just saying they're not so in tune and they're not trying to get a good or a bad effect or trying to post about it on their Instagram with 10,000 followers. Like, you know what I'm saying?
10,000 followers.
They're just
my God.
like, that's nothing. That's nothing. I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying that's a lot.
12,000
I have like
followers.
1,000.
Oh, bro, don't worry.
I specialize
will
in
bump you up.
low follower count.
It's not true. It's not true. But what I'm saying is it's interesting to try that stuff on those sorts of people. Because have tried it with other women and stuff and given it to them or whatever, have them buy it. And nothing. I haven't had nothing. I have never had
Oh, because, well, okay,
Yeah.
personally, anecdotally, everybody that I know that's taken it has at least reported a pretty quick, almost like a sedative type effect acutely, and then with different long-term effects.
I gave some to my mom even once, and she said that, and then she kept trying it, and then she said,
maybe it's just a first-time thing,
so,
maybe
I don't
it's
know.
like... Okay,
I have no idea.
We should have stayed at lizard and be able to regenerate. Yes, reject monkey, return to salamander. Any thoughts on neurotransmitters? Pete says acetylcholine is a sign of stress.
Well, I don't know. I have Pete, Ray. I feel like Ray would say getting up from a chair is a sign of stress. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of signs of stress that Ray mentions.
Well, that would be the getting up from a chair would be a stress.
Yes. Oh, okay. The byproduct.
Not a sign of stress.
Okay, you know what I'm saying. Okay.
In terms of staying at lizard, so this is one of the things I wanted to I'm going to go back to this, return to salamander. Wow, there's kind of a lot. Matt Blackburn says to wear 2 pairs of EMF blocking underwear when I go to my local health food store to pick up my oat milk.
You gotta protect these nuts, son, boy.
Get it? What's up, Dr. Pete? Oh, somebody's saying we should have a group picture with everybody that talks about Ray Pete stuff and all have carrots in our hands. Like, what's up, Doc? Like Bugs Bunny.
This is a lot of work. Like have everybody take a selfie and then like put it together?
Somebody said, Kyle, can I ask a question, but it's not spelled correctly? And yes, anybody can ask a question. Danny says, please break down Glover Teixeira versus Caitlin Chukagian. Wait, who's Caitlin Chukagian?
I don't know. Caitlin Chukagian? That sounds like an Armenian last name. I don't know. Let's see it. Caitlin
Somebody
Chukagian.
said my sleep
Oops.
routine: hammer to head, head to bed.
Oh, yeah. Who did she fight? She fought Holly Holm once, I
Uh,
remember. She's
oh
got
yeah.
a
Did she win?
she's got one of the thick jaws. No, I doubt it. I'm pretty sure no, because this was like at
Uh,
Holly's peak.
peak Holly? Was she peaking?
I'm not sure.
What dose of
Oh,
vitamin E
yes.
would you take? I would probably just start with whatever the recommended dose on any product I get is, and then like because vitamin E is not particularly dangerous. Like if you way overdose it, it's a blood thinner. I'm sure that there's other things that could happen. I
Hmm.
mean, every compound has a toxic level, but vitamin E is not one of the things that is a big super danger. So I wouldn't worry too much about it and just kind of take, yeah.
Standard, whatever. Usually it's like what, 250 to 500 probably usually on the bottles or whatever.
I don't even know. I don't,
Yeah. Good talk.
thoughts on psilocybin, or if that's boring, thoughts on ketamine. I haven't taken either, although, yeah.
Same. I know a guy that does ketamine. You can do it here. There's a doc here in the
Isn't
fucking
that like a
in the
GI
valley
treatment
somewhere, Studio
now?
City, I think.
Yeah.
Ketamine for
Mm-hmm.
GI. I mean, that's hell of a treatment for GI, but I don't know, bro. But he does it for
Oh,
depression, or I mean, did it? I haven't talked to him in a while,
more
but
than
he said it
once he
worked.
takes
But
it.
yeah. Oh yeah, it's like you come in, you lay down for I don't know several hours, and the doctor's there monitoring you, and they give you like a drip of it or whatever, like a slow
I've
drip.
heard that you could
But
take it
but
like a one-time kind of thing to like alter gut physiology in a long term, kind of like a course of antibiotics.
that that I haven't heard. So I don't know. He says, but I don't know. It's usually people that are like, not to be like super judgmental, but I just mean like people that are attracted to doing drugs usually do those sort of things. That's what I'm saying. And he's one of those guys. Like he's into like mushrooms and fucking LSD and all that sort of stuff. He says it works, but I don't know. Like I don't want to take drugs
Yeah.
regularly. You know what I mean? I just don't want to like even if it did work, I don't want to trip balls every month, every weekend. So I don't know. I don't know. But he says the time that he was doing it, it works and blah, blah, blah. But I haven't heard of anybody saying, like, okay, like I'm healed and I'm done forever. That's the story that I want to hear with like any of these like
Well, isn't that
ayahuasca,
what they're doing?
LSD,
Somebody
whatever.
asked why are health clinics trying to push ketamine suddenly? Same with lithium. I think this is back maybe to the tail end of when I used to listen to NPR. Um, yeah,
Ooh,
over here with an NPR tote bag. No, I
Jesus.
actually never had an NPR tote bag. I wanted one. Um, But
Oh
I
God,
think I heard
dude,
about
the
some
patience.
soldiers from Iraq or Afghanistan that were in trials for PTSD stuff with either ketamine or LSD or whatever, and so that was really big, and
Uh,
that would have been
TMA. Uh-huh.
10 years ago because that's about when I stopped listening to NPR. So I think what happened is this stuff has been experimented with. I think that there's probably positive uses for people like that, and different types of. But the thing is, it's like what you said. Whether LSD and related compounds are, it's not really like any compound is good or bad, but what you really want to avoid. It's the same thing with penicillin. Like penicillin isn't good or bad. It's good. It's an antibiotic. But the mindset, like you can really start to go down a road where say there's 20 guys from Iraq that like watched their friends all get blown up and they have PTSD, and they have good like
Uh-huh.
measurable good results from some type of psycho genic or what's a psychotropic, I don't know, what are those drugs called?
Psychotropic.
Some kind of
Yeah.
compound that has
Well,
a
no, hold
psychological
on.
effect, such as these things.
Well, no, that's not a
No, that's a
neurotropic. No,
smarter.
it's not a
Um,
neurotropic. Okay.
So
Yeah.
so that could be totally true, but it could also be true that then that explodes into a thing where everybody that just feels a little sad takes these drugs, and like that's the solution to their depression or some crap like that. And it's like,
Yeah.
I would really, because that's just,
Psychedelic.
no, psychedelic
Sorry,
is what
bro.
you call like the leisure use of
Psychedelic.
them.
Yeah,
Right.
but I
Yeah.
just mean that group
As
of
a street
drugs.
drug, they are
Is all that
psychedelics. At least LSD. Ketamine is not a.
Yes.
It's a yeah.
Pushing the
It's a
ketamine hole,
what's it
bro.
called
So
when
I don't
you
know.
dissociate. It's a dissociative, and a horse tranquilizer.
Yeah. There's
Um,
horse.
Horses actually, they need something to party because you can't get a horse drunk. They have.
Not
Well,
true.
I don't know if it's physically impossible, but their alcohol dehydrogenase activity is like orders of magnitude higher than ours. And of course, their body mass is enormous. So they're like the amount of a lethal amount of alcohol for a human would not even really affect a horse. You could say it that way.
Not crazy.
Because
We used to just.
the fermentative bacteria in their ruminant stomachs produce a lot of ethanol, and so they detoxify it like boom, boom,
Yeah.
just throw it right into metabolic pathways like NADPH pathways.
You ever try horse steak?
Yeah, dude, K1 and horse meat. Now
No, I'm
I
serious.
had
It's good, bro.
I had it. I had horse and whale sashimi in Japan. I think that's the only time I had it.
Oh yeah, they do. Oh yeah, I've had that too actually.
Yeah.
Not in Japan, but I've had that too. They do horse sashimi. That
Mm-hmm.
shit's good, man. But I don't know. Is it good or is it that sauce that they always put? Japanese know their fucking sauces, huh? They just put some sauce on there and you're just
Well, they invented
you
umami.
can eat shit covered
You
in
know?
that sauce. Yeah, and I invented your mommy. All right, I'm sorry.
Okay. It's like broke mommy,
All right.
woke umami. Bespoke your mommy. NPR is important to listen to get inside the mind of the enemy. Yeah, the thing with NPR is, oh my god, I don't think I could actually take it because it's hypnosis for a certain like segment of the population. It's like because they're like,
Yeah.
we here we are at they'll
Definitely.
go to like, I don't know, like a fish market or something, like, oh, we're here to see this hectic, and it has fake sounds of like a fake market.
Yeah, and it's just all fake. It's so weird, dude. One of the weirdest things America has ever created. I don't know, dude.
Well, it's
so
weaponized
strange.
like Vermont.
When I-
It's like weaponized New England libtardism as like a psychological operation on a certain, it's like segment, like it's like just like a genetic population, and you can like see like the way the glasses they wear and like the way that they carry themselves, that they have like a susceptibility to this hypnosis.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it is MK.
Can't do it.
NPR. It's like NP Ultra. Uh, NPR Ultra. Thoughts on nicotine? You like that, right?
Yeah. I like smoking a little cigars every so often. All that good stuff that they say seems to be true. I don't know if I'm a fan. That's what I'm saying. I would rather just smoke a cigar than have this fucking weird gum that I bought that's like sugar free or whatever, has all this other weird stuff in it. Like I don't know. Like I would just rather smoke the cigar. And plus, I think you'd still feel it, because I don't think with cigars and tobacco in general, I don't think it's just the nicotine that you're feeling. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, obviously not, but I'm just saying, like, I think the stimulants, because that stuff is not. It stopped being researched, right, as far as a beneficial drug, like a long time ago. I don't think they do any of that sort of research anymore. But there's lots of research on like Alzheimer's and all kinds of stuff for your brain.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of plant chemicals in there, but also a lot of like, Somebody asked, do you think penicillin is the most important drug ever created? Yeah, probably. Yeah, if you had to go back in time. Although, maybe it's not the best thing that septic death has gone to like 0. If anybody is a Ed Dutton, the Jolly Heretic enjoyer, you'll understand what I'm talking about. YouTube channel. That's all I'll say about that. Too many questions. Talk about sticking batteries in your trunk. Okay, so yeah, let's get back to let's get back to the book. So do you have any, so, all right. So I went over kind of like, bro, I didn't actually give equal time to every section. So the way I explained the book, I was not proportional to the book. So there were sections I glossed over that were longer, and there were sections that I kind of had more points about that were shorter. But that's one way you could have a takeaway from the book. Do you have any overall impression before we start talking about the book? And yeah,
of the book, well, I think it's a good book to read still. Right? 10 years after the first time I read it. No?
Oh,
Wouldn't you
absolutely.
agree? I mean, yeah. Like, you know what I mean? No, I mean, yeah. I think as far as anybody who's concerned about EMF and stuff, I think because that's like the last chapter of the book. Well, not the last chapter, but the last section, right? That's like mostly the EMF stuff. I think that stuff
and the
is
problems with
pretty
the
good.
science funding stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty good and very still.
I do have one last bookmark here for some of the DNA stuff, just to kind of give a perspective of the synthesis, I guess, between DNA and electrical fields. He was giving a paper at the New York Academy of Sciences, February 1967. One audience member responded with a criticism. So this is not that long after DNA was kind of discovered and solved. So what he did, because he was given a criticism that some of the de-differentiated cells that he was able to produce could just be like degenerated cells. And you kind of have to show, like, how can you show that if you turn a cell into, you take a cell that's a tissue that has a certain kind of proteomic profile, it produces certain proteins that has certain physiology, and you use electrical fields to kind of revert it away from that. Well, how do you know that you like de-differentiated it in some type of different way than just a damage or even a tumor producing or a type of tumor maybe? So he went back and did he says here, I mean, this work is concomitant with Watson and Crick. He's a few years before James Watson and Francis Crick had proposed what became known as the central dogma of genetics. In simplified form, it stated that the active DNA in each specialized cell imprinted its own specific patterns onto transfer RNA, which related them to messenger RNA. Okay, eventually it makes protein. So we reasoned that since a de-differentiating cell was not going to divide immediately, it wouldn't duplicate its genes. Therefore, there should be no increase in the amount of DNA it contained. So he's basically saying this. Oh, it looks like the stream is actually kind of cutting. I'm getting YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. As such, viewers will experience buffering.
No.
And I'm seeing in the comments, is this cutting in and out? For anyone else, yes.
Maybe it'll come back. Give it a few seconds before you were going to say what you were going to say.
It's like running, but it's doing.
Is it just whatever? Just not catching up? Look, I pulled it up on my phone right now. It seems okay. I mean,
it says going. Stream status poor.
Things.
Yeah, so it's basically like laggy, and I don't know why. It could be like my internet is bad at this time.
Could be mine.
Yeah, you need to start hardwiring your laptop. Do you want Wi-Fi pollution into your? Do you want that?
So here's the thing: I don't have one of those routers that's connected to a line or whatever.
No Ethernet.
I just have It has it's this new what do they call that? What the fuck is the name of that thing? I can't remember. They just brought me a router, and they connected to the building's things, and they like bounce the shit off the fucking ceilings. It's of the whatever you call it. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's just like everybody shares it here. So it's just like my router just picks up on whatever is at the router. Bro, I'll move. Jesus Christ. But I wonder, actually, it's a good question. Like, okay, maybe this company can actually still do that for me. Just give me like a hardwired one. I'll ask them. So
No,
sorry, I apologize.
that might not have been it
Yes.
though, because
One of these
your
days.
signal to me did not get blurry. So it could have been YouTube, it could have been on their side, or it could have been my out to them, whatever.
Mhm.
It's back
How are the
now. It's back now,
comments now?
and
We're
it
back,
says,
people? Okay,
yeah,
so you were
I
saying,
was. Page 145 of the book in the chapter "The Ticklish Gene." So he's basically saying
chapter.
if he successfully de-differentiated these cells, that they should go into an S phase, which is a phase when a cell is just doing a steady metabolism and not ramping up for division, for mitosis. So it would not duplicate its DNA, because that's what it does when it's preparing for mitotic division. So he decided he could do a simple experiment by showing, okay, the DNA is not increasing, but the RNA should increase, because when the cell, if it's de-differentiating and changing its cell type, it's going to change the genes it's expressing. Okay, so it has to make, it's kind of like if you have a factory and you make widget A, and then the guy that buys widget A is like, well, I'm not buying them anymore, and then you send widget B. You're going to start selling widget B, but you have to retool your factory. So you have to take all of the machines out because they don't make widget B, they make widget A. So that's kind of like a cell that goes from, it's a bone cell, now it's a pluripotent cell. It can become anything. You can be whatever you want. Self-esteem.
Yay!
So
Yay.
its DNA, so this cell will not be looking to divide soon because it has to set up shop for a whole new job, but it will be producing a lot of mRNA because that's what's going to make its new proteins to do its new job. So they just did an experiment like that, that because DNA and RNA can be stained for differently. So he was just able to show that like the DNA doesn't go up and the RNA goes up in this cells. And so anyway, the point is there's genetic stuff all throughout this book. And
Gracias.
And so, yeah, so you need the old, you need the genes, it seems. Seems you need the genes. Yeah, so,
That's the
yeah,
part
so
about
what
the
I was going to
genetic
say
key.
about
Yeah.
the book
Okay.
and, like, some of the stuff we talk about, you know how people talk about a few things. One, the difference between weight training for size versus strength. And yeah.
Did you hear that, Carl?
Sounded-
Did you just hear that?
Yeah.
Holy fuck! I don't know what was that. I don't even live on a busy street. Okay, anyway, yeah. So the difference between training for size versus for hypertrophy versus strength.
That's interesting, right? Because most people just assume you train to get your lifts heavier, and then that corresponds to a bigger muscle in kind of a one-to-one thing.
Yeah.
And it's not that they're unrelated.
Yeah, well,
but
there's definitely overlap. Correct. There's definitely overlap, but no. I mean, yeah, even on like a more of a practical side, like most people think that if you are big, you are stronger versus somebody who has smaller muscle size of any particular muscle, or overall, it means that they're weaker, which is just not true. There's no, you can't, there's no way of knowing. For example, like if people want to get like a more of a example for example, if you just take a arm wrestler.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen arm wrestlers? A lot of those guys look real fucking normal. Some of them, have the giant muscles, but that's because they're all doing roids, like super common in the world, obviously. But a lot of them don't, and just like with genetics and taking steroids. I mean, some guys will just grow muscles just from taking some tren, and some guys will grow a little muscle from taking some tren. Well, if we're talking tren, maybe it'll be more than a little, but you get the point. So, there's no way of knowing like who's going to be the stronger guy if you just have two arm wrestlers line up and you're just looking at their size of their arms or their forearms. There's some guys that just have very normal looking arms and they'll just murder everybody there.
Yeah, they'll murder them with a knife.
Versus like there's one Russian guy, Tsiplinkov. It's like, you ever see, what I'm talking about? He has like this, he has some sort of disease though. It was like, he has this like a hand that looks like a fucking
Did he train
paw,
at
TriStar
TriStar recently with that guy that trained GSP? Because there was I don't know, there was a giant arm wrestler who's that guy that runs TriStar. Yeah, he did a role
Farasahabi?
with him. And Farasahabi's like a small guy, and this guy's like, it was just an interesting.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
whatever, whoever it was. Yeah, did he? I mean, yeah, of course, like you said, of course, there's overlap. Of course, a guy who has some hypertrophy that's been developed over time is going to be stronger than what he was before. But yeah, there's no way of telling like who's going to be stronger just from looking at the size. If we're talking about something specific as arm wrestling but even wrestling, right? How many times you see a short little stocky guy from Bulgaria just like throw everybody around, right? Like they have, they call it gym strength or whatever, right? He'll pick up dudes with his, not a deadlift. He can't pick up a heavy deadlift, but he can pick up a dude in a wrestling move and throw him over the back of his fucking
Right.
head.
Well, so this
I mean?
gets and when people talk about training, like say a strongman training, right? They might say something like, a lot of what I'm training is not necessarily the muscle, because the muscle can actually can do this load, can do this lift, but it's like the neuromuscular junction and the ability to fire the muscle.
Yeah, I just put say
Right.
nervous system. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's
you're right, the nervous system. Okay. So here's a connection to
Uh-huh.
this Becker thing. And somebody asked earlier about why didn't we just keep that? There's another couple, like, Joe Rogan with the whole, like, chimpanzees can rip your arms out of the sockets or rip a card. And, I guess that's true. And they're small, though. A chimpanzee is lighter than a person. Or say a monkey can hang
The grip.
for like hours, and a trained person can hang for like, what I mean? Like 10 minutes would be
Yeah, that would be a lot.
So it's like a totally,
yeah.
and so I'm sort of suggesting that what's going on here is their nervous system. So what do they have? What do they not have? Right? They're way less intelligent. So it's like every organism has a certain amount of this bioelectricity, and then the more advanced form of bioelectricity in the notochord and then the spinal cord. And it meets it out to different things. So monkeys are, as far as animals are concerned, they're pretty smart. But, their brain is still quite a bit smaller than ours. But they have probably a ton of nervous activity that we don't have in their hands. And their, specifically their arms, and maybe less their lower limb. Well, I guess they can grab with those too. I don't really know. I'm not a monkey specialist.
Yeah.
I'm a monkey respecter and a monkey enjoyer. But so we have sort of sacrificed that, right? We've taken a different path, a different choice, and that choice. And you could do this in the gym. You can make this choice in the gym in a certain kind of way. You can train maybe more explosively and with less repetitions, and you'll get less hypertrophy than if you did something that's more traditionally bodybuilder type workout. But your lifts will, especially certain types of strongman lifts that are just very explosive. They're not controlled, not necessarily the power lifts, but like a real explosive lift, it's kind of like you're
like say throwing
Yes.
kegs over
throwing kegs
over
for Kevin.
pins, right?
So
yeah.
And you're almost kind of taking advantage of this system, of these two different systems, because it's not all just your muscle, it's the nerves firing it. I actually have a personal anecdote. When I was teaching physiology, one of the labs I taught there were 3 frog labs. And by that, I mean, I had to kill a bunch of frogs before the students got in there. F's in the chat for all the frogs. Yeah.
How'd you kill him?
First we severed the spinal. So we severed the spinal cord with like lab scissors. So it's like you hold them down and just jam scissors that are just open a little bit right at the base of the spine, and then just cut. Okay. So, and then after a while, IRB or whoever oversees the animal stuff were like, oh yeah, it's a little brutal. So they started having us knock them out with was it
what?
No, it wasn't ketamine. I actually used ketamine on my mice.
Ketamine
to like zonk them out before the mice. I just straight up decapitated. But It was
Mm.
some kind of gas, isoflurane, I think.
So just to get him whatever, to get him high and fucking whatever in the
Yeah.
state of
Honestly, I gotta tell
about to
you
die
though,
and just
with or without
mm.
the gas, because they, as soon as I took him out of the gassing chamber, with
Hmm.
glass, it was not closed with wooden doors.
They were still
Um,
fucking
they would
uh-huh.
start to come out of it right away. So it was a real, it actually made it, it made me real, like, because I was trying to rush, because it's like, I want to take advantage of the fact that they're kind of unconscious or partially unconscious. And I'd have to pick up
Hmm.
a glass covered, it was like a, almost like a casserole dish, but it was like circular, and it was a really heavy ground glass. So it would make a airtight seal, because it was like this very textured glass that would make a pretty a seal. And you would put you'd have the
Hmm. Hmm.
isoflurane in there, and then just put a frog in there, close it. It was like a bell, and you'd open up the
Hmm.
bell, take the frog out, put it on like a little dissection thing, and I'd take it to the sink, because you have to, because of the blood and stuff. And by the time I would get there, it would start coming out of it, and then I'd be rushing so much to do that I think actually
Made me just
it
freaking
would
out
be
a little
better
bit.
to just kind of,
Just fucking take them and have them be chill, and then
yeah.
just because when they're coming out of it, they're probably like what? What
Anyway,
just fucking happened?
so three
You
frog
frog
labs.
thing.
One of them was muscle. So we would,
Hmm.
I cut legs. So each frog that I sacrificed before class would donate 2 hind legs, and for each. So there'd be a group of 3 or 4 students with 1 frog leg, and then another group of 3 or 4, whatever, how many students I had. And the experiment would be they would dissect out. So they would have to, this frog legs on the thing, they would have to skin it and cut off the, was it the quadricep or the gastrocnemius? It was just one of the muscles, okay? One of the leg muscles, probably the
Hmm.
gastrocnemius. And they would hang it from like a sensor. And then they would put an electrode into it and stimulate it just with raw electricity right into the muscle. And it would twitch. And then they would measure the strength of the twitch. And they would measure it.
Hmm.
So you'd
Hmm.
start with like low, as low as you could get to make it twitch, and then jack it up really high and kind of see like how high you can get until it doesn't increase anymore. And then there was a second component to it where you would expose the nerve, I guess the sciatic nerve or whatever the nerve was that controlled the gastrocnemius twitching, and
Hmm.
stimulate that. And when they stimulated
Hmm.
that with a tiny, tiny amount of electricity, like an order of magnitude or even 2 orders of magnitude less than they were stimulating the muscle directly, the twitch would be like 10 times as much. In other
Hmm.
words, what really mattered was the recruitment, right? Because if you're stimulating the muscle
Yeah.
with the nerve, it's innervating all of the muscle fibers. So, and it does its own,
Yeah.
right.
Muscle fiber recruitment is what they
So you're
say.
kind
Yeah.
of maximizing that versus if you, depending on where the direct electrical stimulus is placed on the muscle and how deep it's penetrating, you get. And so, you could take like a really small frog leg muscle, and if you more effectively stimulate its nerve, it has a stronger
Hmm.
contraction than a much larger frog muscle that has a less perfect. Like if some of the nerve it was damaged or something, it wasn't fully innervating.
Yeah.
So,
Man, I did similar stuff with cats, bro. Seeing dead cats
cats.
is the worst. I
Oh, to
like
see that
cats.
now, you're just a
Yeah,
monster.
because all of their but it's not me. I didn't kill them, thank God. We just got dead cats, and they were. But cat, just because cats, you see their expression. They're all like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
as before
I
they're
had to
dead. It's
dissect
just
one
like,
cat as a student.
bro, cats are
Yeah.
rough. Ugh.
So,
Anyway.
so tying this all together, it's like you've got the nervous system, right? And to a certain extent, you can train it. You can train, like what you were saying with if you want to get a muscle to be engaged and stimulated more, sometimes you have to make a mind muscle connection so that you're actually
Hmm.
telling the nerves, which are, I mean, obviously our nerves are kind of under our control, right? Like but even to a greater extent, like you can pull sending more nervous
Yep.
impulse, I guess you could say, to some muscles than others, even though they're all involved in the chain
Hmm.
of action. And that you
Exactly.
can train that, and somebody like a top world strongest man or power lifter, you could probably somehow measure that they have like a super tuned, efficient delivery system for those types of nervous impulses to get that explosive contraction, and way less hypertrophy than like somebody on the Olympia stage who can't compete in their,
who can't even do half whatever the amount of poundages that these guys do, but they have much larger muscle size.
So then getting back to the thing,
but it is, and like I said, it's still interesting though, right? That still, though, over time, guys like powerlifters found out that having a certain amount of hypertrophy will increase your.
Well, of course. I mean, it's the same reason there's weight classes. Why, you know, like size isn't the most important thing in a fight, but it still matters. If you're like 50 pounds heavier, if you're 10 pounds heavier, it's still then it's like, okay, man, maybe. But the size, the amount of fibers that you have to bring to bear in a lift isn't the only or even the most important factor. But if you have like, I mean, if there's a 250 pound bodybuilder bench pressing and 160 pound power lifter bench pressing, the 250 pound bodybuilder is still going to outbench him. But a 250 pound power lifter is going to crush, the 250 pound bodybuilder in a 1 rep maximum. And probably a 220 pound power lifter that is a good bencher can outbench, a bodybuilder has 30, maybe pounds on him. So, there's levels to this thing.
There's levels.
To quote the great Joe Rogan.
Levels to this game. You ever tried DMT?
I've tried DIM. That's what we.
Oh, I tried that shit. Never felt nothing. No difference. I don't know.
So
I don't know. You believe it? Some people are super anti. Isn't Ray anti-DIM? Isn't he say it's toxic or some shit?
I can't keep up with it. I just can't.
Well,
I just can't even.
I can't even. Oh my God. Kyle.
I'm just so tired, Like, if I have to explain it to you. So,
oh my God.
Okay, so animals, right? Going all the way down to like Mr. Salamander and all the way up to Mr. I believe that the difference is, right, there's a certain amount of, so you have a certain amount of calories you take in, characteristic of your organism, right? And size is involved, but also metabolic rate. So like a warm-blooded, like a mouse or something is going to use like 10 times the calories as a cold-blooded, like reptile of the same size, maybe even more. And
what about like comparing a cold-blooded, like, what about well, dolphins are not cold-blooded, or are they cold-blooded?
No,
what are
dolphins? Are mammals, so they're.
No, it's a mammal. Is there
hot-blooded?
Yeah, I was trying to think of something that's like. I know. I was trying. That's a fucking good song, dude.
It's on the Foreigner Belt.
I was trying to.
Did you see that episode of Aqua Teen Hunger Force?
Yeah.
Do you watch that show? Oh man.
No.
Carl gets this magical item called the Foreigner Belt, which, like, if you sing the lyrics to a Foreigner song, it like makes. So it'll like start to boil somebody in a pool. Anyway.
I got a fever of 100. Dude, classic shit. All right, I'm sorry.
So okay, so why don't we have the grip strength of the chimp and the brain of the man and the regeneration of the salamander, right? Why didn't we just have all that? Why can't we make our own vitamin C? Why don't we, why don't we have eagle eyes and owl ears? You know what I mean? Why?
So the top of the food chain,
why aren't we just like S tier across the board? Why not?
Why do we have to sacrifice?
Right. So I think this is a powerful suggester of things like biological evolution and the constraint of the energy intake. So we could have, if molecular biology, I don't know, if sciences maybe advanced quite a bit, you could sort of maybe see some type of chimera engineering thing where it's like, hey, look, it's a, this person has this trait that's not typically human. Okay. Which kind of like a biological transhumanism. And, well, why not, right? Why not just have all of these organs and these tissues and stuff be as good as the ones that are the most highest performing in every animal? Well, you'd probably need to consume like 20,000 calories a day to power, the brain, the badass grip, the gorilla strength. Yeah, the
eagle eyes.
And
so you're saying that is a powerful suggestion of the whole evolution story, which has been debunked many a time.
It's like why doesn't every company just try to make the best everything? Like, why doesn't a company that makes cars also make planes and also make cookies?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Okay. Because what I'm saying is, like, in our material reality expressed, whether it's companies or organisms, there are these limitations, and the limitations are both absolute, as in like a certain material, like some things don't conduct electricity and some things do, those kinds of things. And then the other limitations are competitive restraints. Like, why doesn't a rose just not have thorns? Wouldn't that be cool? It could look pretty and smell good and not ever, prick you. Well, I mean, but it...
Every rose has its thorn.
Why does every rose have its thorn? Well, because we live in a society where animals want to eat roses, okay? Or they want to, they want to mess with them. They want to tangle with the rose. And the rose, needs to defend itself, just like plants that have bitter taste or even toxic chemicals.
Like every cowboy sings a sad
and why
song.
does he do that? Because he's got to protect his heart from further heartbreak.
Ooh, this is good. This is good
if
stuff.
If we lived in a world where just
yeah.
nobody, there was no competition for mates, right? Then there wouldn't be a need for a sad, sad song. Okay.
Do you think that's where we're headed eventually?
No.
What?
If anything, we're headed towards probably a breakdown in monogamy and a sort of harem type situation where like an Elon Musk type might have like 12 wives and like your average, person has none, which is actually the probably closer to the historical norm.
Yeah. So you think that's getting... So you think that's where we're headed down?
That is the current trajectory. We have already moved significantly in the past 200 years from like much more strict monogamy to much more, like, take Donald Trump, right? He's had 2 or 3 wives. So he's had children with 2 women. So he's essentially had 2 wives. Like he's like a sultan who has had 2 wives. He did not have them concurrently because it wasn't socially acceptable. But like what matters, right, is ultimately who's reproducing with who. So in that sense, he has had a harem. Or say, how about a rich guy who maybe had 5 wives, like from 20 to 50, and had children with 3 of them? That man had a harem, effectively. And then compare that to a man who never had married or had any children. He had no wives. Even if he had, from the biological standpoint of what are we doing here? What's the net effect on the next generation,
Well, hasn't that always been the case?
Well,
though?
yeah, but it used to be very asymmetrical.
You're saying
and then
it's
it became
growing?
less. It became more monogamy. We've never had complete monogamy. And people always, like, the local lord would come and sleep with women in the village. It was actually considered good luck. And if they had his...
I do that all the time, bro. Before like I go anywhere, I have a guy, my buddy, my girlfriend.
It's like the crop would be good next season, if you had the Lord's bastard and a child with a bar sinister, and And a lot of times the Lord would, bring that, if it was a boy child, would bring them in as a page and then a squire and maybe a knight, and they could end up getting something if the guy, whatever, these historical.
So we've gone from a recently period of more monogamy, right? And you're saying we're going
Correct.
into
Yeah,
the opposite direction.
Yeah.
You don't think you don't think it'll fluctuate back again?
Well,
like
on a long enough timeline,
fluctuated?
it's always going to fluctuate back and forth. I'm saying our current, where we are currently, is in the direction away from monogamy. That's the arrow. That's the polarity, the potential.
Yeah. Yes. There's that fucking bar again. Okay, sorry. What the
So
fuck?
okay, so why can't we? Okay, why can't we just chop our hands off? Make sure it doesn't get too badly infected, and grow it back perfectly. Why can't we do that? Okay. It's not that we don't have enough calories. Like, I could do that and then infuse myself with the maximum, like I could intravenously give myself hypercaloric, like way, 20,000 calories a day, it's not going to, my hand's not
Sure.
going to grow back. Okay. I don't have, it's just like if you give a tree endless nutrition, it's not going to become a snake. Okay. It doesn't have that potential. Because the structures aren't there to have my nervous system send out that field to cause the cells at the injury site to express from their genome the proper dedifferentiating mRNA to then re-differentiate and grow through this blastema into new tissue. Okay, I just don't have that. So if I had that, if I had, something, because the nerve, that takes up energy too. I mean, obviously, if you starve a salamander, there's probably an amount of salamander starvation that could cause it to improperly repair a limb, because its body would be like, we just don't have enough this week. Can't do it,
Yeah.
So it's like, from the Ray Peat perspective, everything is just energy. Okay. And it's kind of abstract, because that energy actually has to be, whether it's electric or caloric chemical energy, it has to be both. And the electrical nerve energy comes from caloric energy that we, burn to power our nervous system, and every other system. That has to be expressed through our genome. So like, if you just, I'm sure there's transgenic experiments. In fact, this would actually be, if there's anybody listening to this who's an actual research scientist anywhere close to this field, this one's for you, and it's free. Transgenic salamanders, do a gene screening for genes that salamanders share with other regenerative animals like planaria that they don't share with non-regenerative animals, and start doing transgenics, knocking out those genes, and see if you can knock out the regenerative. So you can actually identify either clusters or whatever that allow that animal you'll probably get incorrect regeneration is what you'll get before you just get total. But that would be like a, good experiment.
You'd be able to tell. So you'd be able to tell if it's which genes have been knocked out, if how whatever grows back, right? Whatever you chop off grows back. If it doesn't grow back quite the same, you'd be able to tell. Okay.
Well, actually, now that I think of it, that's not the best experiment, because it seems like the differentiating factor is their nervous system itself. So you'd almost have to like bork them from embryogenesis to have a less powerful innervation of the limbs.
And can you do that?
It would probably mess up the animal in many, many ways. Like, it wouldn't initially grow its limbs correctly. So I don't know, whatever. So, okay. So what we've made this decision collectively over many generations to we only have so many calories to work with. That has been decided, and that's been decided probably through periods of starvation, right? So you could have had a population that burns twice as many calories of humans, and they would probably be better. They're doing more chemical processes. They're able to maybe grow larger, grow faster, they just have more. If you have more energy, you can do more things. But what happens if there's like a ice age and food becomes very scarce. Well, who's going to survive, right? There's like there's a limit to how much food you can get from your environment, even if you're very smart or whatever. So we've settled on a certain metabolic activity, and so we've rationed that in our nervous system, and we've sent a ton of it to our brain, way more than any other animal. I mean, dolphins are pretty good.
Close.
And there's the other primates, which are like way better than the other mammals. But strictly speaking, like we're quite more innervated at the head.
Tip top.
Top heavy.
Mm-hmm. Top heavy.
And this is why we can't do salamander. Okay, the same reason as salamander can't do thinking. Salamander can't do chess. Okay, salamander can't do podcasting.
Have you tried talking to it? Like, if you take enough thyroid, I've heard.
That's cats.
I've heard that
cats you could talk to.
No, and ants.
If you're talking to
one?
ants,
You didn't hear the
I
ants
suspect
one?
you're talking to a hive mind, no pun intended, a collective ant intelligence.
I was gonna say pun intended, you son of a bitch. I was gonna be like, hi. So we've forgone.
Well, yeah,
No.
we've forsaken. It has been forsook.
Forsaken the ability to do that because of our. I mean, is it largely because of our large brain, right?
Yeah.
You're saying specifically because of the brain?
Yeah, but specifically because of the brain and because we didn't have access to enough energy to keep both. It's like I'm going on the plane. I've got 2 carry-ons. I can only bring one. If the plane had more space, I could bring both, but it doesn't. Got to pick one.
It doesn't. Okay.
So that generation after generation after generation. Pick one, or pick 3 out of 5, something like that. But can't have them all. Give up this, keep that, right? So, and that's why animals are different. And specifically with the nervous system. So when it comes to animals, we have this like real big innovation of innervation with the spinal cord. And we're able to power
Arms are
this.
heavy. Knees, mom spaghetti.
Yeah, I'm out here like Eminem quality rhyming.
Dun, 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 dun. I was gonna put my hoodie on. Fucking headphones came up. Okay.
So that's it. So that's my take on the Bioelectric,
it's
and
good.
I believe that you can read this book and you can apply it to just about every level of medical science, exercise science, like work performance, right? Because especially what people understand now about the difference between just pure hypertrophy and pure strength and the overlap and non-overlap, and biological science, any kind of research, because every organism, right? In fact, this might even be you could use a definition, has an electrical potential. And the differences of them in their cells, and then if they're multicellular, the difference in the size of their electrical potentials, the directionality, and the differentiation and complexity throughout the body and the body plan from centered out and from front to back, side to side, whether the higher organisms tend to be symmetrical this way but not this way, right? So like if you cut us this way, the back of my head's different than the front of my head. But if you cut me this way, assuming I'm a fairly symmetrical kind of dude, which I think looks like I'm not actually, but
nobody really is. You've done that, right? You've done that like on a computer where you cut your face in half and then it's kind of freaky looking. It's like a fucking different person, literally.
Yeah. So and so I think we're talking about like field theory and stuff like that. I mean, absolutely. Like if somebody's out here saying that it doesn't matter if a skin cell or a muscle cell is induced with a nervous electrical field to properly grow into a real limb and real digits. Well, that's just wrong. Okay, that's wrong. You can grow a skin cell in a petri dish, like people do, especially with those immortalized basically tumorous cells that they use, liver, immortalized liver cells, immortalized skin cells to test things. That's never going to make skin. It's never going to make a liver. It's just sitting there. You can grow it for 100 years. You can grow it in different media. It's never going to grow the tissue. Why? Okay. Why? Because it doesn't have the spatio orientation provided to it by the prior limb, the prior body, the whole plan sending out an electrical field centrally out and also locally to, guide it in this growth. It's just growing. It's like, who cares? It's like a work person with no foreman telling them, they're just picking up the bricks and just putting them over there. Who cares? There's no house.
But why and for
right.
what?
There's not there's not a reason that will produce a limb or an organ. It's just producing more cells. Okay. So, but that doesn't mean, that the genes inside that cell are not important. They're necessary. And you can study, on a petri dish, if you have liver cells, it will express probably pretty close to like liver proteins, and like if you want to study the liver enzymes or the way liver stores fat and stuff, you can do some of that very, very basic stuff on the petri dish, Of course, if you wanted to like really develop a drug or something, you'd have to prove that it works in vivo, in an animal liver and then in a real human liver that's actually in the body doing something. But you could do, there's a lot of aspects shared in a ex vivo liver. So you could biopsy your liver and grow the cells. If you know how to culture liver cells or any kind of cells, you could biopsy healthy tissue, living cells, and grow them and study your cells. And they would have a lot in common with where they came from, but they wouldn't, be ultimately the same thing because they're not in that field.
Is that kind of like, how they kind of grow whatever organs on mouse and stuff on their backs and shit? You know what I'm talking about? Which looks fucking
I think most
freaky,
of that they induce chemically.
Right? So that's what I'm saying. So it kind of in that sense, it's not the same thing because it's not the same thing. Obviously, it's not in the same spot inside of you. It's outside.
Well, yeah, but what they're kind of demonstrating there, see, because medicine, like Becker says, they're really hopped up on the chemical stuff. So like, they just like the average science conference enjoyer will just take it more seriously if you're presenting a talk or a paper or something, and you say we induced growth of a second rat arm with this chemical. Okay, what's the chemical doing? It's either telling the cells to express their kind of genetic plan to make another arm. It's mimicking what would naturally be happening from the nervous field energy. So the potential to grow the limb, any one of our cells has the entire genome. So I think if like Becker's stuff was perfectly understood at like Star Trek level, right? You could just take a skin cell and it's like, oh, somebody ripped out part of my liver, whatever, and like stick it in there and give it the exact right conditions electrically to de-differentiate it into a pluripotent cell and then tell it to divide and then differentiate into liver. That's probably possible. And then you can mimic some of that chemically and get these kind of weird effects. Or they do transgenics where they just, like, if there's a gene cluster that they find, if it's missing or mutated, like a rat won't grow an arm. And then they're like, hey, what if we just like double those amount of genes? Like just, you know what I mean? And then they grow like two arms or whatever. They grow different. It's like, so they're kind of like messing with it. And it's very, you know, and they're figuring out what the genes do. The genes do something. The genes do something in this context. They do something in that context. They do something when they have a different code, you know, for the different species and the strains of the different species. But the electricity does something from the nervous tissue, you know. So you need the whole thing. It takes a village to make a limb.
Yes. Yes, sir.
There's a lot of comments, but actually, it's kind of people talking to each other, which is fine. Somebody knows a guy who claims Fort Knox is successfully regrowing amputees with electrical currents. Oh yeah, did they use gold?
Oh, interesting.
Okay, so.
And it also is interesting, right? Have you ever known anybody that as an amputee?
Yeah.
I used to work with a guy that had a, just interesting, just on a whatever, like just talking about it. When you talk to them, they're like, yeah, it fucking hurts every day because your body is still like sending that signal that it's like, it's not there. Like, what's going on? And it hurts every day and they're aching. You know what I'm talking about, right? There's a word for that thing that they call it like
phantom pain, phantom limb.
Phantom pain. That was the word that I was looking for.
So
phantom
that
pain.
I bet, and I forget if Becker goes into this because, like, obviously, when I went over the book again, I didn't page by page, cover to cover it for this episode. But he may have done work on that, and I believe work could definitely be done. Which is that I suspect the electrical potential of injury, that more positive rather than negative potential, is still existent at the limb. And that's what's communicating the injury to the central system, to their perception, in whether it's pain or some people feel like almost like they have like restless leg and they've got no leg. That must suck. Yeah. That might even be worse than pain, actually. That feeling like you have to get into a different position, but what the fuck are you going to put in a different position? It's like, yeah, that would drive that personally, like with my personality, that would drive me bonkers. I'd much rather have like a burning pain.
I'm sure they get, over time.
Well, I bet
more comfortable,
you could electrically, with magnets and stuff, I bet you could anesthetize that pain. With the method that he uses, there's probably chemicals you could use to temporarily anesthetize it that would mess up with that polarity of sending the pain to the brain. And there's probably a way to, well, I guess Becker would just want to regrow the limb and work on that. But there's probably a way to find what's at those limbs with the phantom limb situation, what is not resolving itself so that the body just finally goes, okay, let's go back to full negative potential, no more injury potential. There's probably a way you could turn that off. And then I bet that would completely turn off the that fake feedback and the phantom pain.
I wonder if I somebody talked to somebody like that had just like somehow cured that pain or whatever, it just went away. If they,
here's another good experiment. Take people that are amputees and rank them by level of phantom pain. So somebody who has none and somebody who has the worst, and measure the difference in their limb potentials at their injured limb, missing limb. I bet it would be in conformity with their reported level of perception and pain.
That'd be wild, man. That's crazy.
So, you got anything to talk about?
Yeah. Just, you ever think about living up here and you stop living down here?
Yeah. Well, no? Every day.
Everybody in the 313, or is it 313? What's that zip code that they do in 8 Mile? Remember when he starts rapping in the end and he finally breaks through? 818? No, 818 is over here in the valley. I feel like it's 313. Now everybody in the 313, something, follow me. Remember?
It ends with 3 because
313? Must be 313 because there's like a matching number there, I remember. Good times. Yeah, well, that's fucking crazy, man. I don't know. I wonder. And wearing that boot also hurts them. They say it doesn't get better. Well, I mean, I'm saying if it's a missing leg that, is the amputee.
Word.
Because that for me, all right. I don't know. Any questions? I was just thinking about it to myself.
I don't think so. Somebody said, what's the legality of thyroid supplement? Is Kyle discovering the redemptive value of suffering? Let's not. I already know that.
what you're saying, though. You're not suffering. It's
Somebody
okay.
said more mid-2000s Pride FC talk, please.
Mid-2000s to Pride.
Towards the end of
Man,
Pride.
fucking good times. Okay, so Fedor was your favorite. Who was your second favorite? Or you know, who else did you get a little excited, got a little hard on to watch, you know? Crow Cop.
Yeah,
I mean, you mentioned Crow
when I
Cop,
first started
you know?
watching
I mean,
MMA,
he was
the Crow Cop versus Fedor fight was like the marquee fight of all time. Like that was considered the high water mark.
Legendary.
And I used to they would do Pride reruns with Frank Trigg. Oh
yeah, Frank Trigg.
And,
yeah.
You know, I guess, I mean, Wanderlei Silva was on top of the world at that time. I actually watched one of the first pay-per-views I ever bought was the Pride FC when he got knocked out by Dan Henderson. I watched the Nick Diaz versus Takanori Gomi. That was one of that might have been the same.
Damn.
That was either the same event or they were within a month of each other, because I bought like the last 2 or 3 Pride FCs until it just, you know, was bought by the UFC and shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think NAC lowers glutamate?
Crazy, right?
Know. NAC and glutamate. I don't know. What do you mean, like in the blood?
I have no idea either.
I don't know. I can't, like, there are things, I've probably said this before, there's things that I've said that I've known, that I've explained on podcasts like 5 years ago that people will bring up to me and I'll be like, wow, that's interesting. I don't know that anymore. It's you know what I know though now is I've been working a lot with amino acids at work, and at this point in my life, not when I was studying for a biochemistry test, but now I can draw the amino acids. Like I've got almost all of them memorized, all the side chains, because I'm working on this amino acid oxidase that like oxidizes this one really good and this one not so good, and it's like, well, why? What's the difference with the side chain?
Oh my god, I'll pray for you,
cool.
bro.
It's gonna be
don't do it.
Probably my last project at that lab, so I'm taking it all in. I'm soaking it in. I'm soaking it all in.
That's true, if
you will.
Oh man.
Leo is the funniest Peter Eater I've ever seen.
Peter Eater. People come up with these fucking new Peter Eater. I don't know.
Yeah, that could go either way.
You know what that sounds like? Sounds like I eat dick, my friend, but thank you very much. Sounds like I eat a fucking dick sandwich for breakfast every morning.
That's probably the best, like, new Petarian or Petarded or whatever. Kind of like Peter Eater.
Yeah, like it went from like Petarian to Petarded, now Peter Eater. That's you.
Oh, I was going to make... So, you know, the Ray Pete Confidential video? I have another... No. Well, I mean, maybe someday I'll do that, but I don't really like to... I don't want to go down that road where people are just going to keep expecting, like, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have...
Yeah.
I don't even want to say, like, when... But I have another idea for a type of... That type of satire. No.
Just fucking say it.
No, because that'll ruin
God
it.
Damn it.
Basically, all I'm saying is at some point in the future, near or medium term, there will probably be another funny Ray Pete video where I do the voice. It totally different type of sketch, not having to do with the noir stuff at all. And I think everybody's gonna like it.
You gotta get John the Savage. John the Savage. You gotta just put that little clip of him at the end there, just like, and just
maybe I'll have him
his
do
voice, because he has a pretty good. He has a pretty good one.
Because I could write it and then I could have him do it. It could be like a collaboration. I'll have to talk to him. It's too bad he's not. He's actually a moderator in this channel. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Like when I first made this channel, he was like, "Hey, can I be a mod?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." This is like over a year ago. Like nobody would even watch the streams, so there's nothing. I mean, there's nothing to moderate anyway. It doesn't matter. It's just kind of cool. It's like, yeah, I got a mod.
Yeah. There you go. Is he the only one? It's just John.
Yep.
Just John on there.
He's been in like one stream.
Nice. Come on, bro.
Um,
Good
yeah, I
time.
think that's good. It's almost 2.5 hours. That's so so look,
Rocket.
this is probably going to be the last video. So it's possible I always have stuff that I'm trying to make new video, new essays, new video essays, and some of the funny stuff. And so it's possible like I could record and make another video before 2021 is over, but it's also possible that this will be the last piece of content on the channel for 2021. Frenbolone episode 2.
Was a good
It was
year.
an okay year. Uh,
Come on. Come
we've
on. It
had
was a
ups and
good
downs.
year.
Somebody asked
Come
the
on.
benefits of taking lysine. Yes. In the sense that just in general, I think
I
lysine is
see.
one of those kind of not quite as good as glycine, but one of those amino acids that you benefit from getting a little bit more than you can get out of food. Supposedly it has like antiviral. It boosts protein synthesis more than just the normal balance of amino acids. So yeah, everybody have.
Yeah, some dudes put it in their
I have a
post-workout
bag of
shakes and
it, and
shit.
because I only use a few grams every time, so it's lasted me so long. I wonder how much of it's broken down just into it. Well, I guess I'd smell the ammonia. I don't know.
Mm.
What about tyrosine for dopamine?
Mm-hmm.
Tyrosine, I don't know a lot about therapeutically.
Used to take it Poliquin days, never noticed anything. I don't know. So take it for
Yeah.
what it is.
So yeah, everybody have. First of all, the audience. Whatever. Thanks for watching. The whatever stuff was on the channel for this past year. This was. Yeah, I think I started the channel like so many years ago and didn't really have any content for like a while. And then last year, 2020, is when I first started doing streams. And then this year, it's been.
Oh yeah.
So basically, I'd like to just keep on keeping on.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, in a month or so, not more, not more, we'll do
Yeah.
Frenbolone 3. And it's yeah, I'll be nagging you.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll be
we
the
got to come
nagger.
up with
You
a
know, I'm a nagger.
topic, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Or we don't, and we just got to do it because we got to fucking do it, Kyle. So it
yeah.
is what it is. Yeah. But no, we'll always no. It's always good. I know it's always good to have a good topic, and today was good. I learned a lot myself personally, so thank you, sir, for the idea. This was totally your idea to do Body Electric. We've talked about it before, right? Like a long time ago, and then you just kind of finally we came around
Yeah, we
to
should do
doing
another
it.
book. If you have a book that you like,
Sure. Okay. We'll
something
see.
that
I'll
can
pull something
something
out.
that is interesting in itself, and also kind of can overlap with some type of, whether it's like a repeat topic or
Hmm.
even like a lifting topic, performance, nutritional,
Hmm.
whatever.
Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding by Schwarzenegger. That's the
Mm.
one. That's it. We're doing a deep dive.
Yeah, never read
Just
that
kidding.
one.
You never read that one, bro? That's like a standard. No? Come on, that's the classic. You didn't have what was your first like fitness book or
I
whatever
didn't I
or
didn't have books. When I first started
to it?
lifting, even before I started lifting, when I was in middle school, I would just pick up like Flex magazine or Muscle and Fitness.
Oh yeah. Yeah, see, I don't know. I mean, I've read some of the men's health and stuff, but yeah, not so much. I don't know. They looked so it's so crazy, right? Like I remember because I actually remember walking into a store in fucking Ohio and looking at the magazine section and seeing Jay Cutler on one magazine. And I remember thinking, this is not a real human. Like literally being so shocked how they looked. You know what I mean? Like if you've never seen that
Hmm.
before and you look at one of them, like I literally remember being shocked. And then now how funny it is that over years it's just like another day. Now it's on Instagram like everywhere. You know what I mean? Like nobody's even shocked by it anymore. But I still remember like literally physically feeling like, what the this is a person? like thinking how, like this is not possible.
Yeah, it looks a little fake,
Crazy.
but yeah.
Just a little.
All right. Well, Merry Christmas, everybody, and
Merry Christmas. Happy New
yeah,
Year's. S
let's make
Novым
it
годом,
a
as we say in Russian.
nutritionology New Year, and a
Woo
merry.
woo.
Uh, what goes with Christmas? I don't know. A merry
Is it
Friendmas
Christmas? You
and a
don't know.
nutritionology New Year.
Drink lots of milk, warm milk, hot cocoa. Put some lysine
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
there. You know,
All right.
a little bit of thyroid. Talk talk to some ants.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah.
Mm.
All right. I'm cutting it. Stream out.